You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land, we celebrate music. In this land, we celebrate games. In this land, we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VGMbassy. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the VGMbassy. This is a show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. My name's Ed, and on each episode I'll take the role of Prime VGM Minister and invite a guest VG Ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture. Or I may share a part of my culture on a solo show. Speaking of solo shows, I got a lot of great feedback from the solo show that I put out a couple of weeks ago. Lots of people were really happy with a lot of the soundtracks that I picked. And so I'm glad I could share that stuff with you. I'm also glad that you guys are enjoying the solo shows because, like I said before, there will be a few more than usual coming your way just to make things a little bit easier on me. So if you guys have suggestions for themes that you'd like me to visit on my own, maybe things that I've talked about in the past that I'm a fan of or something like that, let me know on Discord, tweet at me, hit me up on Facebook, and let me know, and maybe I'll work those into some of my solo shows, because I'm always looking for things to chat about for an hour or so. But today is not a solo show. Today is a show with a theme that I probably never would have done on my own, and it is thanks to our first-time guest VG Ambassador, Ryan Steele, who has, I think I called him doubly qualified to do this show as we were chatting before we started recording. Ryan, sir, how are you today?
Howdy, partner. I'm doing good.
You're already getting into the role, huh?
You betcha, you city slicker.
Yeah, that's me. I'm the suburb guy. So, speaking of which, what are we chatting about today?
We're talking about some farming, you not hillbilly. I got nothing.
I was like, how many more are we going to get to?
City slicker is the only terminology.
I've been called worse, my friend. Don't worry about it.
Makes sense.
So how did you come up with the idea for a farm episode?
Well, I took everything I could possibly think of, which is probably 8, which isn't a whole lot when you think about how many things one could think of. And I just threw ideas at you, and you picked that one, and I was like, oh, great, the one I actually don't care about. Tight. Sounds good.
Well, see, I figured you would care about it because you do work on a farm, so I thought, hey, yeah, farming would be cool because I don't know of any video game music podcasts that have done farm games before.
There's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I thought so too, but as I was looking through some of these games and listening to some of these soundtracks, I was actually really surprised by some of the cool stuff that I found. I don't know, what was your experience getting through these games and finding music for them?
Well, I started off with 50 farming games that I could find off Wikipedia or some other ginormous list. And then I whittled it down from like really terrible indie games to better indie games to big title games. And there was a lot of Farmville clones. There was some really questionable games, like I think it was Elf Breeding Farm or Elf Breeding Ranch, which was pretty PC 98, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, don't check out that one on the Googles.
Especially while your kids are around.
Yeah, I just looked through all these games. I picked the ones where I had experience with, and then I picked a couple that I had no experience with, but looked cool and really obscure.
That's awesome. And I saw your list of 50 games, and I was like, holy crap. So I challenged myself to find games that were not on that list of 50.
And you came through because I had not heard any of these games.
Yeah, so I was really surprised. I found some lists on the deep dark corner of the web with some suggestions for fun games that involved farming. And I guess we should also say that these games aren't all necessarily like farming is your primary purpose in the game. It is a section of the game and a part of the game that you need to play to succeed in the game. But we have a few games that are like farming, that's what you do in the game, and a couple where farming is a big part of many things that you do throughout.
And the farm is it's a pretty vast thing. There's so many components to what farming is. Mm-hmm. There's many avenues that one goes, and in certain games they tackle so many avenues of what farming is, and in some of these games it's just one aspect of it.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about your farm, like how you came to work on the farm, what you guys do, and then maybe we can kind of relate that to what these games are as we talk about them.
Well, like all good farming, it is really through nepotism. You marry into it. If farming is so ridiculous in the sense of the cost of everything that you cannot buy your way in. Well, yes, you can buy your way in, but you can't like loan your way in. For example, I have 2/4 of land. That is 320 acres.
Wow.
About 100 acres of it is pasture for my cattle, and the rest of it is grain land. That cost me $900,000.
Wow.
I do not have $900,000. I do not have the down payment required for that, which was $90,000.
Yeah.
I married my wife, which is what you do for most wives, is marry them.
I would hope.
Usually that's the way it goes.
I don't know what you guys do in Canada, but
It's really weird, eh? Real weird down up in here, eh? So my wife's dad owns, I think, about 3,000 acres, and then we rent another 2,000. So he helped us buy this land because we bought it from him. So he made the down payment for us. He sold it to us for $900,000, and then instead of it being like $810 what we actually paid for, he just paid $90. It's the most humorous way to make a down payment is to actually have someone pay the down payment on your item itself, because if he made it $820,000, then I would need $82,000. That's how you rig the system.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you got your own little farm,
little happy farm,
and you've got what, livestock on there and vegetation as well?
Yeah, betcha. I have 40 cow-calf pairs. They are of the breed Maine Anjou and Speckled Park, which are probably, to your listeners, both breeds they have never heard of.
I have not myself, no, but I'm no cow expert.
Well, the Speckled Park, they're really cool. They're speckled, as the name infers. And when I was at the Edmonton Zoo, they have a rural area, where they have chickens and cows and things like that. And when you think of a milk cow, you think of the Holstein, the black and white cow.
Yeah.
But when you have a milk cow that produces 40 liters a day of milk, that requires a lot of milking.
I bet.
So what they did is they took the Speckled Park cow, which is a meat cow, which does not produce a lot of milk, like most beef cows. So then they had the image of a Holstein cow, which people expect in the zoo, but didn't have to deal with the aspects of actually having a milk cow.
That makes sense. Okay. So it's a little easier on the zookeepers, etc.
Yeah. Clever girl, if you will.
Yes, indeed. And also, switching gears a little bit, you also write music, and you've written music for a few video games here and there. So how did you get into that?
Well, it all began 10 years ago when I was in Bible college / music school, playing in a progressive death metal band with Satanists. I know, isn't that interesting? How does a...
This is a real story. You're not just yanking my chain.
This is legitimate. I was playing in a thrash metal band with Satanists because I was huge into Megadeth and Nevermore, just huge metalhead.
Gotcha.
And as any good metalhead knows, you're not ever supposed to refer yourself as a metalhead because of genre, pop bias. What doesn't matter, elitism.
Yeah.
That as one has in prog metal, you have to have a certain amount of elitism to enjoy prog music because your music is better than everything else and everything else is peasant pleb. Of
course.
It's just the same thing as people who listen to, who is that horrible VGM composer? He did the Silver Surfer game. Who knows what that guy is?
Oh, that Tim Fallon guy? Yeah. Oh,
Total
God.
hack. Yeah. Tim Hacken or whatever I like to call him.
He wouldn't know prog if it bit him in the chin.
No, not at all. Anyways, so when I was playing in this metal band, I would write music, and it was long prog music, and eventually that band fell out. I started another prog metal band with the guitarist, and they kept telling me, because everything was written inside a program called Guitar Pro, because it's tablature for writing out all your guitar parts, they're like, it just sounds like video game music, and that just kept being the theme of everything I was writing was, this sounds like video game music. And I'm like, well, it's not supposed to sound like video game music. It's supposed to sound like hard-hitting prog thrash metal.
Interesting.
But no, it was video game music. Everything was video game music. What ended up happening, as it being a prog metal band, we got a keyboardist in our band. And our keyboardist was from Georgia. That would be European Georgia, not the hillbilly Georgia of the US of A.
Gotcha. Eastern Bloc.
Yeah. So he was all like, everything should be in 4/4. There should be a strong melodic idea. So I joined his symphonic metal band. And at the time it was called Meridian. It got turned into the band it is now called Soulborn. And so I was playing guitar in his symphonic metal band. And he taught me, or rather showed me, or it's like all about like orchestra, symphonic ideas. How do you have strong melodies and things like that?
Oh, cool.
And it was just like an eye-opening sort of idea of like, okay, I have so much going on. I need to simplify. I need to make it so it has things. And so I just started writing just straight video game music because of his idea. Eventually, I moved out to the farm, and I had no intention of becoming a farmer. I had worked at a car dealership because I didn't want to be a farmer. But eventually, I was like, I don't like cars. And I guess your dad needs help.
Cows are better than cars, so...
Yeah, we had cows. When I married her, she had cows. And so eventually I just became the cow guy in that sense. So, 5 years later, I just keep writing music. In 2017, I was already on the Catlandia project because of game jams. I would go to every game jam that I could in the Edmonton area to build my skills to write music. And it wasn't until I went to audio school in 2017 that I really learned about the idea of music as an emotion, as what do I need to feel? Because when I listened to metal music, every emotion that I felt was, it makes me happy because it's shreddy. Or it makes me angry because it goes...
Yeah, pretty shallow
like
stuff.
The emotions are, it's like, it makes me feel epic because it's power metal.
Right.
It's like, okay, I need to expand on what emotions I'm supposed to be starting to feel. That, and it taught me how to mix and master and all the other sort of stuff you're supposed to do in audio school. But especially from switching from writing everything in music notation, aka Guitar Pro, and switching it over to my DAW to I now play everything on the piano. And my piano skills are not nearly as good as my guitar skills, and are not nearly as good as my typing into my notation editor skills. Because when I'm doing with notation, it's like, I want to do a 30-second run here, and I want to do a 30-second run here. I can do those everywhere I want. And then the other problem is that I also have to deal with the fact that it doesn't humanize things. And the velocities are all exactly the same, and I got to do it. It's just way too much time afterwards. So it also, when I was doing things just straight in a DAW, just writing, playing on my piano, it allowed me to like really establish. And on the other hand, mixing was a whole lot easier because I was mixing as I was writing instead of having 32 tracks that I have to mix all at once. So when I think back to when I was writing with Catlandia before I went to audio school, a lot of the early tracks in the game are from when I first started writing music. So a lot of them are just coming straight out of my prog days. So there's a lot of melodic ideas. and some of the mixes aren't as good as they should be. And another problem is that I go back to mix them, and they just, I don't know, something just doesn't click the way it should. So at one point I just decided, you know what, this is a reflection of who I was at that time. And I know although games change, and it took 5 years for them to finish that part of the game, which now there's new DLC coming out. And with new DLC coming out, it allows me to write new music. And of course, I love, I would say, mostly everything that I've written for the new DLC. And some of them are really killer banger tracks that are just so good to me. As humble as I can be, if I was to humble brag, they're great, but not that great.
It's funny how that works sometimes, because like even with pop artists, when they'll have a so-so freshman album, and then they'll come out with their second album and it's like a billion times better, and people think that they just got good overnight somehow, when they don't realize that it's been probably years between writing those two particular pieces of music, because you've been shopping your freshman record around for much, much longer than, you've been working in the studio for your second. So I can totally understand how that would work, and how people might think, oh man, Ryan just really boned down and studied 90 hours a week to get better at his craft, when really it was just practicing and practicing over a long period of time. So,
and it being one's first crack at something, they get better over time.
I think practice makes perfect in almost everything. So now that we have kind of a baseline of your experiences on the farm and behind a keyboard and a guitar, I think we should start getting into some music, and we'll talk about things like emotion and conveying mood and stuff like that as we get through these songs, and see what we think about them. So what is first on our agenda for the evening?
Well, if it's my pick, or is it your pick?
Oh, it's always the VG Ambassador's pick first.
Oh, look at that going now.
I am a gracious prime VGM minister.
Oh, just a real gent, don't you know there, boyo. Oh, I'm going to switch into how many Canadian accents that I can do here, and that's probably just 2. That would be Loftiness from Monster Rancher 4 from the PS2 era, composed by Hiroshi Miyazaki.
All right, we'll be right back.
And that, my good friend, was Loftiness from Monster Rancher 4 from the PS2 era of 2003, composed by Hiroshi Miyazaki.
And he deserves an intro like that, because that was really good, dude.
It bangs.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this game at all. I'm not familiar with the soundtrack. When that kind of tin whistle lead came in, I was like, all right, this is decent. It's kind of, a little bit shrill, but once the rest of the band came in, I really felt like I was sitting in the middle of this live band just playing instruments all around me. The stereo separation on the production was really, really good. Very high energy, but it also felt kind of very rustic and farm-like. So good combination of those two kind of sceneries in my mind. So why'd you pick this one?
Well, I was listening through the entire OST, and there was another song from the fighting arena that came in that I really enjoyed, but it's more like an aspect of me going through these OSTs and finding the songs that I found just hit me the hardest in the sense of what emotion I'm feeling, rather than a specific point in the game. Because I played Monster Rancher 4, and sometimes when I play video games, I have to think back to where was I living when I played this game.
Yep.
What year was it? And I was like, okay, I was living in, it says 2003, so I knew I was living in whatever house I was living with, and I was like 11 or 12 when I played this game. So I have no recollection of any of the music in the game. So it's more of a like, okay, this is what I remember playing, and I picked up an emulator because I own this game, but at my sister's house. Or rather, it was in my sister's storage locker, which got broken into and stolen.
Sure. So you still technically own.
Technically, at one point I owned it.
Yeah. Next episode will be a pirate episode.
There we go. Yar me hearties. Pirating all the good stuffy.
Exactly. And eating all the Krabby Patties.
Yar.
So did the music come back to you? Like, were you like, oh my god, I remember this stuff, once you heard it again?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all.
Interesting.
What I do remember of this game was its sweet, and I mean sweet, ability to have, and I'm sure other games did this, but there was a character or creature summoning that was done via DVD discs.
Oh, that sounds vaguely familiar.
I don't know what other game has done it, but I've heard of this before.
Yeah.
But essentially, you go into a screen in the game, you pop your Monster Rancher 4 disc out, and you put a disc in of any DVD, it reads its information, and then generates a monster for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically remember the best monster I ever generated was from a copy of Catwoman, which was the Joker/Reaper. So I'm guessing that it read the information that it was from Batman or something. And I don't know if the actual, it really works. I remember a Final Fantasy song summoner game doing this, where you'd pick your song, and I'm sure it just picked something at random. But in my heart, I thought, Catwoman's got some good tricks.
Yeah, it probably just takes like the CRC check from the, the disc label or whatever and generates a random algorithm which creates your monster. But it's fun when they actually come up, they have some sort of a coincidence that makes it feel like it's really coming from that movie. I remember there was another Tecmo game called Dragon Seed on the PS1 that did almost exactly the same thing. You pop it out, you put an audio CD in, and it will generate a new dragon for you based on whatever audio CD you put in there. So that is pretty funny. That's cool. So, like, were all the monsters in the game generated randomly, or was it just like the one you start off with, and then do you collect them like Pokemon or something like that?
From what I remember of the game and what I played of it recently, you start off with one monster. I believe its name was Garu. It looked a lot different than from my memory. It's a lot of text-based. So it's a lot of characters, and it's very anime-esque. It's very much like Fire Emblem, where you have characters on a screen that are anime cutouts with like a background on the back. So you talk to people, and you have a character that you are given, and you are given this monster in which you raise it. And so it's pretty much you just work around a calendar. So every week you can give your monster a task, and they have a stamina bar and a happiness bar and things like that. With the system in which it works, what you do is you pick certain aspects that you want to raise its stats on. So I want this monster to have dexterity or strength or intellect or whatever stat you want. You give them that exercise regiment for the week.
Gotcha.
And then slowly there's tournaments. So the idea is during the week they're doing that exercise, and then on the weekend you can go to town or do activities or do the tournaments, and so that would be the fighting system. So there is the raising aspect of it, and then there is the fighting aspect of it. And in the fighting, there's an actual fighting. It's like a 3D, I'm not going to say like Tekken, but it's the same sort of idea.
Okay.
Where you have two characters on a circular area, and you can spin around in it, and you can go back and forth. But it's very simple in the sense of like whatever distance you are, there's an attack you can choose, and then as you raise your animal, your monster. You can add more attacks to it, but each attack is distance based. So if you're at a certain distance away, you can do these certain attacks, and you can cycle through your attack windows. So then you fight, and that's pretty much the game. And then there's a story to it, but the main aspect of it, that is the farming aspect to say, is rancher, which is raising livestock, or in this case, it's you raising monsters.
So quick question for you. How do you train your speckled cows for their tournaments?
Well, I start with a lot of grain. I like to choose the ones that are really flighty. It wasn't even last week. The problem is that a lot of my cows aren't really bad. It's all my brother-in-law's cows. He's got the craziest ones. The ones that put him through the fence. The ones that do not back down. They jump over fences. They go right through you. When they have calves, it's violent.
So they have like extra points in aggressiveness and speed, basically.
Oh, you betcha. He had a heifer last spring that needed to have a C-section because she was just too narrow to give birth. But because she was so riled up from the pain and she was super flighty, she put him through the fence. So we came back and we're like, we need to put you in the head gate to pull this calf.
Yeah.
But since she was so aggressive, we had to put her in the head gate with a skid steer. And she was just ramming at the skid steer, trying to break through the glass. And then we find out, oh, we can't pull it. We got to take it to the vet. And then he had to take it to the vet. Same issue.
That sounds a bit more challenging than any video game I've ever played, man.
The best part is we have cameras. So we didn't record it, but my wife was able to watch from a distance and just be like, oh my goodness, I am watching my husband potentially die by some crazed animal.
Wow. Jeez. It's the aspects of farming that you don't realize exist. And you think are relegated just to raising monsters who fight each other. It's the only way you're going to be able to put in danger.
Yeah, animal husbandry has its challenges.
I bet. So, looks like you did a little bit of research on some of the composers that worked on our games. You want to talk a little bit about...
Sure. Well, he has multiple names. Miyashiro Sujito, or Hiro Miyazaki, or just simply Maya, or it's Miya, depending on how you want to spell out M-I-Y-A.
Interesting.
Particularly, he did a lot of work at Tecmo. I know, some small independent company that no one's ever heard of.
Nope.
In 1985. And he kind of worked there until 2007. And as far as I can tell, he just straight up went off the radar. Like, he has a Facebook profile that you can go look at. It's all in Japanese. But as far as I can tell, he's done since 2007. But he did a lot of work. And I didn't really realize this game really existed, but they got a new one coming out, Captain Tsubasa, and he was their big writer.
Oh, okay,
for
cool.
a lot of their games. And he did Tecmo World Wrestling back on the NES, and a game that I'm sure you've played, Ninja Gaiden 2 and Ninja Gaiden 3.
Yep.
So he did music on there.
Interesting.
The last big game he did was Monster Rancher 4.
And then, as we used to call him on Pixel Tunes, they turned into a ninja and vanished. Never heard from again. That's pretty cool, though. I wonder, like, if he had stayed with, like, the Ninja Gaiden series, because I see that he did Ninja Gaiden 2 and Ninja Gaiden 3 on the NES. If, if this is what, like, later Ninja Gaiden games would have sounded like for cutscenes or something like that. It's always kind of fun to think about what they would have done back in the day. All right, man, so... You ready for my first pick of the day?
I suppose I must.
I promise there'll be decent songs. I promise.
Will you?
I'm a little bit experienced at doing this stuff, so.
Okay. I trust your judgment, Mr. Prime Minister. As a Canadian, I mean, I respect the Prime Minister. I don't know if you Americans respect it as much as we do.
Well, I'm self-appointed, and I didn't call myself the president for a reason, so... So let's get into our first track of mine. We're going to listen to a track called Gardens, and this is from a game called Staxel. This was released on the PC in 2018, composed by one Curtis Schweitzer. We'll be right back. All right, that was Gardens from Staxel. That was released on the PC in 2018, composed by Curtis Schweitzer. Very, very friendly sounding tune. What'd you think of this one, Ryan?
Well, what a dense little musical number. I have many thoughts regarding it. Specifically, musically, from a composer's standpoint, you have a track that is... Well, first of all, it's very good, but it is so very busy. There is so many different musical techniques being used, from arpeggios in the background to driving strings to little flourishes everywhere.
Yeah.
And it takes a melodic idea and it starts off very, I wouldn't even say simple, but the part I really like about it is how it keeps weaving in new instruments. You don't even realize that these instruments are coming in. You don't realize that other instruments are coming out. There's only so much dynamic range that you can have in the space. And the composer realizes that I can only have so many melodic ideas at once. And I'm just imagining his workflow of like, okay, this is the 6 instruments I can have. And then it's just like, this stack, then this stack, and then this stack, and this stack, because you hear an instrument comes in, and then another instrument leaves, and another instrument comes in,
right?
But it doesn't take over until another one has left, and then when it takes over, and then they just fade in and out. So the structure of how the song is made is so very clever. There's so many different techniques used in the background of the song between like those arpeggios and those driving strings, that then you have this overall motif and idea that just keeps coming back. And then it goes to a calm space. It pulls it all away and it comes back to that simple arpeggios, which are using delays on it. And it does that because there's so many melodic ideas and so much busyness that you're like, okay, I gotta let off the gas pedal a little bit here. I'm speeding a little bit, and then it brings it back in. And that song is so alive with how it brings life, and then it tucks it away, and then it builds, and then it brings it back, and it's just so very busy that I can't imagine this as being I'm farming.
Right. Yeah.
It has to be a title screen or something for me to like say this works. Because if I was listening to that while playing a farming game, it's so busy that from a composer standpoint that it's like I wouldn't be able to like chill to that song. I'd have to be like hanging out in like a shop or something that is just so busy that it just takes so much focus. It's so good.
The feeling I got from this track was of flight. And for some reason, like that trope of the like very chimey arpeggios and a kind of almost a wintry sound makes me think of like softly gliding through the air over the ocean. The song feels very kind of floaty and mid-air to me. It's kind of a weird way to put it, but I liked that feeling. And yeah, I totally agree with you. The whole gardening or farming aspect of this song, I can't really see how that would fit in very well. I get a much more kind of open air kind of sound to it. I noticed also how those instruments kind of come in and out. And you think the song's almost like looping almost halfway through, but then you get these really nice flutes in your left ear. And I love how they really take up their own kind of space stereophonically. All the instruments kind of have their own little space. If you're listening to headphones, it almost like feels like they have their own little space in your head that they occupy while they're playing and kind of playing off each other, which I love good stereo quality in songs. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite aspects of music like this. So yeah, and I think the music really kind of fits with the kind of game this is. It's a voxel-based, kind of like town raising game, so it looks kind of similar to Minecraft except that the shapes are a little more complex. It's not just relegated to your simple blocks. You can have, thatched roofs and actual triangles and oblong shapes in places. But the characters are all very cubish and all very cartoony. There is a aspect of you improve your rundown village through farming. You have gardening, livestock raising, beekeeping, orchard keeping, and it's a multiplayer experience as well. So you can invite your friends to your village and you can farm with them. They can either choose to have their own place of residence on the island with you, and they can, you can make it a permanent game between a whole bunch of players, or they can come in kind of like Animal Crossing, where they're just a guest and they pop up and they help you with some stuff and then they head off for the day. And as you build up the village, you can build shops, you can build an arcade. Once you have an arcade, you can do like little mini games, you can do like laser tag and some parkour and kind of play all these really cool games with your friends, and then go back out and do some more manual labor in the fields, I guess. But it looks fun. It looks really cute. It looks like a game that, probably like 5th and 6th graders would really enjoy playing together. The farming aspect is mainly planting, watering, and harvesting. They keep it really simple. They're not like, you can only grow certain vegetables on this land and they have to be next to each other to be able to grow better or whatever. It's really just kind of growing your resources and using those resources to feed your people, build buildings, and improve your technology around the island. So it sounds fun. I haven't played it myself, but I've kind of read up on it a lot. It was developed by Plukit and published by Humble Bundle Games. The lead developer Bartwee was the creator of the game Starbound, which is pretty popular. I've heard it was pretty good. The composer was also the composer on Starbound, Curtis Schweitzer. He's a freelance composer from Colorado, so just south of you. He's also written music for Airships, Interstellar Rift, Ashes of Mankind, and a little game called Halo Infinite. It's got a lot of indies to his name, and then boom, like one of the most biggest AAA series on the planet. So it's fun and funny. Did you look into this game at all, or is this like a brand new title for you?
As most of your games will be, it is brand new to me, but I did look at it and saw that it was pretty much Minecraft with a lot of farming aspects to it.
Yeah. It's adorable. And I think this would be a great game for kids that were really into Minecraft, but maybe as a multiplayer aspect would introduce them towards some kind of teamwork-based gameplay and stuff, and not just kind of running around trying to set each other on fire as one does in Minecraft.
That's pretty much all you do in Minecraft, right?
Exactly.
Fight zombies and set each other's on fire.
May as well give each other some set goals and try to accomplish them together, right?
Overall, it looks like a really cute game and something I would probably play with my daughter.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about me and Logan, so...
There you go, you and Logies.
Might be fun.
Rocking it out.
Yeah, raising some bees together. Trying not to get stung.
We used to have bees.
Did you?
Yeah, we used to raise bees, and it was specifically my brother-in-law and my sister's sister. They raised bees, and they both got super allergic, but we still have honey reserves, and we still have hives. We just don't have any more bees anymore.
Interesting.
But it was a fun experience, putting the bees in the little rocket ship that spins round and round and round, and the honey falls out, and then you clean up the honey and you strain it, and you got delicious honey.
That's awesome. Flying, stinging insects scare the crap out of me. I would never be able to raise bees. But at least you got a lot of honey in reserve, so...
You betcha.
You can drink a lot of tea, peanut butter and honey sandwiches.
Sandwich.
Cool stuff. All right, man. So that's about all I have to talk about with Staxel. What's your next track for the show?
Well, my next track is the pinnacle of cutesy farming. It is the song Autumn Joy from Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life from the GameCube and later released on the PlayStation 2, composed by Hiroshi Nakajima.
All right, let's take a listen.
That was Autumn Joy from Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life on the GameCube and PlayStation in 2004, composed by Hiroshi Nakajima.
I say, very good, old boy. Really enjoyed this one.
Yes, and quite.
I felt like I just wanted to skip through fields and fields of poppies, you know? Little jaunt, monocle, top hat, spats.
Yes, and quite.
Yeah, this was good. And joy in the title of the song is a perfect description for this, because it's got a great kind of cadence and bounce to it, almost like a polka kind of a boom bop, like a calliope kind of a sound. Very positive sounding. I've heard some like accordion in there, and a little bit of it came down a little bit during that piano segment and then lifted back up again. So I feel if you were listening to this on loop in the game, it wouldn't sound so stale after a while. You have that little kind of like refreshing period in the middle, and then it kind of gets a little bit more uplifting again. So really cool track.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's it definitely sounds to me not real instrumentation. It sounds MIDI.
Yeah.
I do know that in other tracks, it sounds like live acoustic guitar. I don't have my research in front of me, but I'm pretty sure all the acoustic work is live, and then everything else just MIDI sample based.
Gotcha. Interesting. It's hard to do really good sequenced guitar, as I'm sure you have experience with.
Sequenced guitar is the grossest sound. I don't understand it, how they can do beautiful violins, but guitars. Okay, acoustic guitars or string guitars, like nylon string, they can get away with it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little bit to it, but electric guitars in general, I don't know what goes on. I've tried. I've been lazy, and I've okay, let me try a nylon guitar sound. Let me throw overdrive on it. Now it's hot garbage.
Right.
Oh wow, this went from I guess I have to whip out my electric. Great, now I gotta learn these parts. It's so much easier to be like, here's MIDI information. Oh, I played it somewhat wrong on the piano. Oh, let me just tuck it over here.
Yeah.
Oh, great, I gotta play on guitar. Oh, yeah, let me spend 15 minutes learning this guitar part, or I could just plug it and play it. But no, guitar's gotta sound like hot garbage.
Well, if you can learn how to use FM modulation chips, you know, the FM modulation kind of emulates the guitar sound a little bit better with that kind of ring out. So, you know, start learning how to use like the Genesis sound chip, and maybe you might be able to get some decent guitar tones out of it. Just learn a whole new chip instead of picking up an instrument you already know, you know?
Well, to be fair,
make it easy on you.
There is a Sega Jenny VST that I can just plug in and have those sounds, and then it's just pick it.
Boom.
There is actually decent VST guitars for electric. They just cost monies.
Right.
And it's like $250 for one instrument.
Right. And it just requires a whole lot of aftertouch, too.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you get that whole kind of sequenced robotic sound, and you really have to manipulate every single note after you perform it to make it sound like you're actually playing on those strings.
The biggest issue is that when you play that instrument, you can tell when it doesn't sound real. I don't play the violin, so other than oh, this sounds like a violin. Okay, this is a violin.
Yeah. So getting back on track, so why did you pick this particular track from the whole Harvest Moon soundtrack?
Well, I gave it a lot of listens, a lot of playthroughs, and this just sounded like the most fun and the most dynamic in that sense. There is a lot of really short tracks. I'll have to say the mixing on some of these, or just the production quality, isn't quite where I would like it to be. Just the way that the guitar sounds, but it's a lot of just the songs, just they were okay, but this one just sounded like the most fun out of all the tracks that I had. Autumn is joyful. You get to harvest. It's pretty sweet unless the harvest is wet, and that sucks. But this apparently, in video game worlds, all harvests are fun and joyful, and you get to collect the fruits of your labor.
And everything dries out as soon as it stops raining, so you don't have to worry about any of that.
Ya betcha.
And I'm actually kind of glad you picked this one, because this is a little bit of an uplifting, a lot of our music for this show is really chill and calm. And this is a little bit of a break, I guess, in all that chillaxing that we're doing this evening.
It's fun.
Yeah, man. So I've heard a lot about Harvest Moon and the series, and I specifically remember when I was working at like GameStop, the original Harvest Moon was like the bee's knees. Everybody loved it. It was so amazing, and I was like, I don't care about farming. Like, I want to play Tekken. So what's the draw about this game?
This just builds on a principle that was well established. If I remember correctly, the first Harvest Moon was Super Nintendo, and then the Nintendo 64 really brought it home, and this was like the first high quality Harvest Moon title on the GameCube. It has all the aspects of farming that you would normally have in an ideal world. You plant your seeds, you water them, they grow up, you harvest them. And this one, and just like every other one, you take over a farm that is usually your grandparents or someone's. Basically, you take over an abandoned farm that is just disheveled.
Gotcha.
Your fields have rocks and stones in it. You have to upgrade your items so that you can have more field to work with because there's stones in the way. And in that way, it does emulate real farming. If you were to take a field and it needs to be broken, you have to hit it with the heavy disc to tear it up. My brother-in-law bought some organic land recently. They had to put through a plow and then a high-speed disc and a lot of working the land. And so you need heavy equipment. And in these Harvest Moon games, they have a stamina system, so you can't do all your work in one day. Otherwise, you will pass out and the doctor will be like, hey, yep, you can't work that hard. You all need to sleep.
Yeah.
So apparently, they're a bunch of socialists, not working people to the bone.
Right. So are you breaking up rocks manually in the fields when you're going out there in Harvest Moon?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. You got pickaxes, you got your axe, you got to chop wood. There's dungeon aspects in it, and fishing, so you can go fishing. There's chickens and cows, and you get a cow. A lot of my experience with this game particularly was my sister. She loved Harvest Moon. She was really good at it. I was really bad at it. I didn't realize that in order for a cow to produce milk, they have to be bred. So once the cash cow went dry, I didn't have the money to buy a bull in the game to make babies and in that sense make milk. So then I was poor and I was trying to make money off chickens. So there's like in those aspects of the game, they're all the same. You start off with like very little. You raise your chickens because they give you eggs because they're the cheapest, and then you get your cow and then you get to breed them, and then you build your big farm. And there's love lives in this game, so you get to marry someone, so you get a little chicken kidlet and you get a dog. And there's a whole dungeon aspect that has to do with mining, and you can't mine all day, otherwise, once again, you run out of stamina.
Right.
So it really created the fundamentals for all of these farming games. It is the original of this style. So a lot of these games that have like this aspect of fishing, farming, animal husbandry, going into a dungeon and picking rocks and mining, it really all stemmed right here from Harvest Moon as they laid the groundwork.
I see what you did there.
If you will. They really planted their roots, if you will. It'll grow on you.
Oh, God.
Looking at you, Utopia Nemo.
I see all the other companies were just mining their ideas from Harvest Moon.
Ho. There you go.
There you go. So, if somebody were to have gone back in time and said to you and your sister, hey, one of you is going to grow up to live on a farm, do you think you both would have like looked at your sister and been like, yeah, it's you?
No, because my sister is a huge nerd who lives in a fantasy world.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
My sister is really into D&D and very imaginative. Like, I like D&D, but like her imagination was so much more vast. Like, we used to play games together like Banjo-Kazooie, and we'd play the games for hours, and she would tell stories about the games. So,
okay.
Manual labor was never her forte.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that kind of reminds me of Emily. That's interesting. So, I guess the right one ended up working on the farm. Anyway.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about Hiroshi Nakajima.
Sure. Hiroshi. He is a game composer and a programmer. He's been working with Marvelous Inc., Software Heaven, FTL Games, and Victor Interactive. He started off with Dungeon Master on the old PC and SNES, and Apple II and Commodore and Amiga. I know it's your favorite system, the old Amiga.
One of them.
And then he got to work on Dino Stalkers. He's been working on lots of stuff. His last composition has been on Harvest Moon and the Tale of Two Towns, which is in 2011. And he didn't go on to be a ninja. He went on to be more like a sound designer and sound editor. So from there, he's worked on the Resident Evil games, so Resident Evil 2 and World of Final Fantasy, and Star Ocean. That one's before 2011, but he did a lot of work on some of the really big games as composers with Square Enix, with Final Fantasy Tactics. He was a sound editor. Cool. In Final Fantasy 3, he was one of the composers. Final Fantasy 5, he was one of the composers. So he's got quite a bit of experience, but he does a lot of sound effect and programming. So he's a very versatile composer.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I see where you have like Final Fantasy 3, you've got the 2006 version. So I think he might have done the arrangements for those might have been like, say, 2006. So it would have probably been the DS version.
Yeah.
Of Final Fantasy 3, and I think they rearranged, yes, new instrumentation. So he probably took care of that.
So you can see that he's shifted away from composition to a more of a position of managing teams and doing sound design and editing. Because as a sound designer myself, there is definitely a creative aspect of it, but it is way less mentally taxing in the sense of trying to come up with new creations and trying to write music and being in the mood. It is much more, I'll just say, mathematical or laborious, just in the sense that it's like, okay, I'm trying to make a sound. This is what I want it to sound like. Let's play with sounds. Let's play with different noises. Let's see what I make. This is just what I want to make. It's very set. It's very finite. This is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. It's not like,
well, let's see what an autumn rush feels like today.
Right. And you're spending more time trying to get over that initial block of what do I write, and you can just dive right into making sound effects and stuff. So
yeah. But have you heard of the tale of Harvest Moon?
I have not. You hinted at some sort of a controversy or interesting story before we started listening to the song, so please regale me with your tale of the Harvest Moon.
Well, you say Natsume is the company that localizes it. Mm-hmm. And so in Japan, it was under a different name. It is also rather known now as Stories of Seasons. So what had ended up happening is that at that time, up until 2013, Natsume handled the English translations and the distributions of this series in North America. So essentially what ended up happening is Natsume decided, we're going to keep the Harvest Moon brand and keep making games. And the actual company that makes it in Japan just took the name and kept it Story of Seasons. And so now they are re-releasing Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, but now it's like Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. So the whole series, or Story of Seasons, Dorame. So sneaky, any Harvest Moon game you are buying now, past 2013, is actually Natsume, but it is not the same company.
Gotcha.
So people have regaled the newer games as, okay, they've kind of dumbed it down. It doesn't hit quite as good. It doesn't really feel the same. They've gone a really different direction. Well, it's because it's not the same company. It's like saying, Rare games aren't as good as they used to be. Nobody works at Rare that used to work at Rare.
Right, it's all Microsoft now. That's interesting.
Yeah, Grant Kirkhope isn't writing Rare music unless Microsoft tells him, hey, we're making another Banjo game.
Right. Here's $1 billion.
Yeah, go take your money.
It's the only thing that'll get you back in the saddle. Exactly. So it's funny how it kind of branched off into two different release schedules, more or less. I wonder how different they are in scope between the two. I'll have to look into that a little bit more.
Well, because like Story of Seasons now still plays like Harvest Moon. It still feels like it, but yeah, like the other ones are like, we're gonna take Harvest Moon and basically make it a mobile game.
Gotcha.
Is pretty much what happened.
Okay, so they really dumbed it down.
It's mobile. It's Farmville.
That's unfortunate. That's really so they basically just capitalized on the name and.
It is. It's all just marketing, baby.
Threw something quick together.
You gotta be a star,
yeah,
baby.
Not a star this time, unfortunately. Well, I feel like it's time to move on to the next track on my list, which is an interesting one. I actually really like this soundtrack. I hadn't heard of it before I started doing research for the show, and I'm kind of excited to share it. This is a track called Planetary Pioneer. This is the summer mix from Verdant Skies. This also, again, came out on PC in 2018, and this was composed by Troy Strand. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. That was Planetary Pioneer, the summer mix version of the song from the game Verdant Skies. This was released on the PC in 2018, composed by Troy Strand. I really, really like the slight hip-hop flavor this song has, with those really kind of wet claps, those kind of trippy, fluttery little hi-hats in the background, and the blending of the piano and the electronic instruments I thought sounded really good together. What do you think about this one, Ryan?
It is exactly what I would expect as background ambient music for a farming game. It's simple and chill. It's got those chimes. It really plays on, and as you're going to hear, the tropes. It's the indie sound, really.
Absolutely.
You've got bell synths making those pops. You've got piano and you've got strings. It screams indie, cell shaded. I really enjoy it. The transition, the progressiveness. I love prog music. I love it when music takes you to some place and it just keeps going, and then eventually it comes back to a full circle. It has to loop, so you have to have, if you're making a journey, you have to go up and you got to come back down, unless you're going hard blast beats. But this is slowly, it builds. It takes its time getting to its destination. Unlike that first track, which is like, destination is now, we're busy, we're going. Still beautiful,
right.
Still great, but this one takes its time, and then all of a sudden, I'm in The Legend of Zelda, and I'm hearing piano, little bits, little jibiblets, like flourishes. Every time I hear piano flourishes in like with ambient area, that's all I think about now is Breath of the Wild, because that's the entirety of that soundtrack is little piano fun bits over top. Yeah,
reminds me of Breath of the Wild so much there. And towards the end of the track, where everything just kind of gets breakdown into its core components, where you just get, there's some beat and bass there, and then those kind of drop away, and then it's really just like some of that electronic lead and the piano doing their own thing together, and that's great because it sets you up for the loop, and then you hear all those pieces come together again and then break back apart and then come together. So as you're farming and probably listening to the song for I don't know, 6, 7, 8 loops, depending on how long you're out there in the field or doing whatever it is while the song is playing, you're not going to get bored of it. You're going to really kind of be able to explore all the aspects of this song, and I really like that about this.
Yeah, and if you have huge speakers, that low end bass will wreck your bowels.
Oh, yeah.
It just...
You will be creating new fertilizer for your vegetation.
It's part of the circle of life. That and those hi-hats. Those hi-hats go so hard. Those little stutter bits, those hi-hats get me.
Yeah, and it's really cool that the composer, Troy Strand, he's mostly a teacher. He teaches music, and he also teaches woodwork and robotics at a charter school. So he's been writing for band, orchestra, and film and games since 2005. He teaches at a Minneapolis charter school and spends most of his free time playing games and making robots. And there was a little quote from the internet about his take on the music, and he says, "The music for Verdant Skies changes as the game is played. Because no two gameplay sessions are the same, I wanted to capture a variety of moods with this release. For this reason, I broke it into the summer and eclipse mixes, reflecting the different seasons in the game's alien world. Each mix takes the listener on a different journey, traveling through various locales and meeting the diverse cast of characters in the game." And it's really cool. Like, this is a generic kind of a farming tune, but most of the other songs on the soundtrack are named for individual characters that you'll meet in the game. So he's written personal themes for every character that you meet in the game. And I didn't choose those because those were like really short little like minute and a half kind of vignettes. And they were cool, but they didn't really go as many places as this particular track went. I think they were just basically meant to play as background music while you're in conversation with that particular person. But there's a summer mix and an eclipse mix of this Planetary Pioneer track. And I like the summer mix because it's a little more uplifting, a little more upbeat. The Eclipse mix has a bit of an air of mystery to it. It's a little more muted and a little more down tempo. And I just felt that the melodies and the groove in this song really was brought to the surface on the Summer mix. I liked it a lot.
I wonder with just not playing this game and just thinking strictly from a game designer aspect, as I have to think about these things when I make video games. With these ambient-esque style games, and I know it's probably not this way, but when you have an ambient track, it would be really cool if you have characters, and if you're going to write themes, to have it written in dynamic audio. So it would be really cool if that theme played on that ambient track. So when you're talking to that person, that theme plays, and then it fades away when you stop talking to them by that ambient backtrack. Now this ambient track is probably a little too busy, and that would take so much mental strength to write.
I'm sure it would. I can almost imagine if you're, for instance, walking around a town at night and there's, cricket chirping in the background, and that cricket becomes the tempo for the song that plays when you meet somebody, or, frogs ribbiting in the background or something, and having those ambient wildlife noises kind of become the tempo that's set for the music that plays. I think that would be really cool, but again, like you said, it'd probably be really difficult to try to accomplish.
It would be so hard, because you'd have to write an ambient bed in one key, and then have that be able to be everything. You just have to have 16 different melodies that all worked on the same chord structure and could bring in at any given time, and it is doable. All you have to do is write like a 4-chord progression and then just keep looping that 4-chord progression, then just come with the melody, take it out, and then build on it. But it would take so much time, so much effort. And looking at this game, the character design, like the one I see a lot, looks like Parvati from The Outer Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
The one with the jumpsuit. She looks like Parvati to me. The character design and the way it works with its 2D animation on I don't want to quite say isometric sort of plane. I don't know what quite that perspective is, but
it has a little bit of depth. I like to call it like 2.5D.
Yeah, it's cool just in the sense that it's like they all just look like it's got very much a Paper Mario feel to it.
Right. Yeah, kind of pixelated characters on more of a high resolution background, for sure.
But they also look drawn, like hand-drawn, deviant art-styled characters. It looks a lot like visual novel style characters.
And a lot of it is. So I'll get into a little bit of the game description, a lot of which I took from the website. So the game was developed and published by Howling Moon Software, which is based in Minnesota in the US. And it's a life simulation game born from a love of games like Harvest Moon, which we just talked about, and a desire to create something unique with modern gameplay and deep storytelling. So there are beautifully painted worlds, all crafted by hand. So you're right on that, hand-drawn, hand-painted stuff. Lots of characters, lots of dialogue. There's a dating system, so it's got kind of a visual novel or a dating game aspect to it as well. You can create your own characters. The unique farming thing about this game, and I guess I should probably set up the whole scene before I talk about this, but you are on a planet called Viridis Primus, and your team is part of a mission to colonize the planet through cultivating the weird and alien landscape. And a big part of this is plant and vegetable hybridization. So, unlike plants on Earth, the plants on this planet are much easier to just combine and see what happens. You plant 2 seeds next to each other, and a totally different plant will pop out. And so a lot of the game is finding out what the strengths and the weaknesses of these crops are, and kind of trying to, I don't know whether it's by trial and error or by, scientific process, but trying to develop the perfect crops for your farm, for the colony, to make it thrive, which sounds really cool. So you might get a crop that's really good for, the hardiness and nutrition of your colony, but it might suck during any weather but like perfect, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you might want to try a more hardy plant that's maybe not as nutritious, and then, kind of experiment there. So it seems like there's a lot of depth to the farming in this, which is really cool.
That brings us to my farming experience, because my father-in-law is what is called a seed grower. He grows seed, not just like plants, but rather the seeds in which other farmers seed. And there's different certification levels between what there's a certification for what you can sell to other breeders or just what you sell to people that they can now breed other people. But there is so many varieties that he's constantly trying out. For example, they all have different names, although they may be barley. The types of barley we have is like Cadillac, Fraser, Advantage, Copeland, Cowboy. They're all different types of barley, but they all have different characteristics, whether it's a 6-row barley, a 2-row barley, it's a smooth on, a rough, or a semi-smooth. They all have different aspects. Some grow tall, some are short, some fall down when they have a lot of water, and that's called lodging. So there's so many types and varieties of wheat and flax and barley and soybeans and things like that.
That's cool. So yeah, it sounds like the developers of this game had a good handle on what the real life scenario was in terms of seed farming, and just kind of tried to bring it up a notch to make it a little more video gamey and maybe a little more fun, because you get a bigger visual representation of, you get some really weird alien looking plants and stuff. And I think you get to name your new crops. Like if it's a unique crop, you get to name it whatever you want. So there's a lot of fun kind of like customizing your farm like that. So that is actually really, really cool. Just before we move on to your next track, I had a little more information on Mr. Troy Strand. He's done mixes and performed on music for the Materia Collective, which is this obviously a huge label for video game musicians, arrangers, remixers, composers, etc. And he only wrote music for one other game called A Druid's Duel. And he's also, like I said, really into woodworking. So with his students in his charter school, they work on creating video game items, power-ups, weapons out of wood in his woodworking class. So he's got, if you go to his Twitter, he's got like pictures of like a huge Final Fantasy VII Buster sword that he made out of wood. He's got like one-up mushrooms and stuff that his students help him make. So I think that's really cool. They're learning a trade, but they're also getting to, create something from a video game that they might, love and be able to kind of be proud of what they've done, instead of making like a stupid, jewelry box or something like that they have no real attachment to.
I'm imagining a Minnesota-based Ron Swanson who likes nerdy.
Yes.
He goes by Duke Silver, and he also does woodworking, and sounds like Ron Swanson to me.
And he composes everything with a keytar slung on his back, which he takes around everywhere he goes.
That was that's my first MIDI keyboard, was a keytar.
It seems like a prerequisite.
It is.
Especially if you're going from metal to composition, you have to meet it in the middle somewhere with a keytar, right?
Yeah, I used to lend it out to my keyboard player in the symphonic band.
Keytar never goes out of style.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Speaking of beautiful things, what is your next track, sir?
Well, the next track is a beautiful track called Falling Leaves from My Time at Porsche, which is released on the Switch, PlayStation 4, Windows, Xbox One in the year of our Lord 2018, composed by, and my French is rusty, although I am Canadian, Claude Ruel.
All right, 2018 seems to be a popular year on this episode. Be right back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Falling Leaves from My Time at Portia. Coming off fresh from the Switch, PlayStation 4, Windows, Xbox One in the year 2018, composed by Claude Ruel.
I like the accent there. That sounded a lot better than the first time. Very nice.
Well, I've been practicing my French in the last 5 minutes.
I really enjoyed this. I was reminded of, and I don't remember the name of the song, but it's from Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and it's like da 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 da. I'm sure millions of people are shouting at me right now, and it's this track, and I'm like, I don't remember, but
it's Hyrule Field Overworld or something like that.
Yes, I'm sure you're right. That sounds like it would be that where it plays in the game. But I did hear a lot of that, especially in those kind of low strings, and then some of even that lead melody had some of those elements to it, but really went off on its own at the same time. Obviously this was a sequenced piece, but the instrumentation was great. I don't think it tried to do the things that the sequenced music wasn't capable of. It kept it simple, but it kept it very effective. There was some woodwinds in there, and I ended up getting like some very low brass, almost like not a French horn, uniphone, whatever they call it, like a small tuba kind of a thing. I forget what it's called. Euphonium. And yeah, so I thought that was really good. Felt very heroic, but at the same time, I did get a little bit of that feeling of like flight that I got from some of the other previous tracks from this show. So what were your thoughts on this? Why'd you pick it for the show?
Well, there's a lot of really good tracks on My Time at Portia. It's all symphonic like this. Well, not necessarily like this. There's, as all farming games is, there's piano pieces and guitar-esque pieces, but I found that the title track, it really sets the vibe for what kind of game this is, which is both adventure, chill, playfulness. There's a heroic aspect to it because there is dungeon crawling and rebuilding, not necessarily rebuilding a town, but like revamping it. And you're really helping out people by working in this game. But yeah, as for the actual song itself, I thought it was mixed really well. It really understands how the symphony works. When you use the term sequenced, I'm assuming you mean not in the same sense of like a MIDI sequenced, or do you mean like it's VST based, like virtual instrument based?
Yeah, synthesized. Yeah, it sounded quantized in a sense. It didn't have that element of real human performance.
Yes,
to a lot of the instruments in there.
It is definitely a sample based VST written in, played on a piano, mixed. It sounds like he's using East West or what other sort of big name instrument-based sample library. But it sounds really good. He understands the placement of instruments. He uses a lot of the techniques that they use in the strings. That isn't just like simple, this is what the violin does. He brings things in. It just sounds like it's really a nice piece. It's mixed well enough to the untrained ear, you would think that a live instrument played it.
I can see that for sure. Fortunately, we have trained ears.
Yes, fortunately. But yeah, it's peaceful. You're going to have a good time. The other aspect I did notice is there is a severe lack of percussion, which most of these tracks will not have like a lot of percussion just based on what these kind of games are. But even then, I mean, it doesn't call for it, but yeah, there's no like timpanis or things like that.
As I was listening through this soundtrack to grab this particular one, I noticed there were a couple of like battle tracks that were pretty rockin'. They had some pretty like rockin' drum kits and stuff in them, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Which it kind of took me by surprise because listening to this song, I was like, oh, what a nice, calming, kind of relaxing track. And then it just really showed off like the diversity of the music in this game and the versatility of the composer, because a lot of those more action-oriented tracks were really good as well.
Yeah, that's the thing about writing music for video games is you have to meet what is going on in the game and write for that piece. There has to be a lot of diversity. And luckily, he's not one of those composers that are like, I can only write one style and everything is going to be that one style. And obviously, you don't see that a lot in big name composers. You might see that a lot more in independent composers, but most video game composers have to adapt to so many styles, and it can be very difficult. Especially I think about myself, it's like I wrote specifically heavy metal for a lot of it, and so like if things are like that, I can write like that all the time. But if I have to write a track that is for polka, or rather it's like Japanese-esque, it's going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a lot more research going on to try and figure out the styles and the mentality. But this guy's got it, some stuff dialed in.
For sure, definitely. So tell me a little bit about the farming aspects in this game.
It's not the most complicated. It still borrows on a lot of the same sort of tropes. This game is a lot more orientated in building rather than farming. So you farm resources in order to build projects. So you come on a ship to this town known as, I believe, called Portia, as the My Time at Portia.
I would assume.
That would be one's assumption. And while you're at Portia, you come there as a master craftsman. And there hasn't been a master craftsman in Portia since, I believe, your grandfather, if my memory serves correctly. Of course, in all of these farming games, your grandfather used to be it, and you were the city slicker who comes in. Now you're gonna set the place straight.
You can do it because it's in your genes.
That's right in your Levi's. So you come to this town and you take on jobs at the crafting guild. And at the crafting guild, you're doing things like building a bridge, but in order to gain those resources, you have to chop down trees, you have to farm and gather the resources so that you can build these items so that you can get rewards and town favors and money and build your life.
That's cool.
Overall, from what I played of it, it's an enjoyable game, but yeah, that's about it. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, it seems like there's some humorous aspects to it too. I watched a couple of the reviews. A couple of them were very amused by the fact that you can just walk around and kick trees to get items that fall from the branches to use as resources. When you're mining, you just grab a pickaxe, and mining is a lot like Minecraft, where you just like swing an axe and just break a whole bunch of blocks, and you can just make a tunnel as you like go through the crust of the earth like it's no big deal. So it seems really interesting. It seems like it has a lot of cartoony elements, but then also a lot of kind of more simulation-esque elements as well. So I can see why it's been getting good reviews from people. It seems like it's put together very well. Not to mention the awesome soundtrack. Anything else you want to talk about before we move on to the next track?
I guess we could talk about the gentleman who wrote this music.
Psh, we're not here for those guys.
No, we're not here to celebrate all of them, like you say in the intro. To celebrate the people who compose it.
Yes.
Is Claude. The thing is that this guy doesn't really have a lot under his belt in the sense of video games. This is his, from what I can see, his first crack. He's based out of the UK, out of London, and he is a career guitarist, and he's performed in many rock and jazz bands. And he is now getting his sea legs, if you will. He's done some scoring assistance on Spear Goes to Hollywood and Endeavor, which is his two other tracks.
Cool.
So for the most part, he is just beginning his career, and you can tell that with his scoring assistant that he has a good grasp on the symphonic elements because he has some experience with it with film score.
Very cool. His career path kind of sounds a little bit like yours. Started off in rock with guitar and kind of moving into the whole scoring and composing route. Very neat.
Yeah, scoring is something that I would like to get into doing, but like it seems so daunting to have to write music for a movie, but also knowing that when it comes to writing music for video games, it's very different than writing music for videos because you're really taking the back seat. When it comes to writing music with movies, you're really going from interval to interval.
Right. You're following the script.
Like, oh, this is a heroic moment. I need to go from the first to the fifth because that's what a heroic interval is. Oh, this is getting sad. I need to go down from fifth to third. Like it's all about slow moving chords to build and then adding all your flourishes and stuff. It's not like big melodic ideas. You think about Avengers and their big like ba 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 ba. It's very simple, but the only time you hear that strong melodic idea is at like the very beginning or when you're at a heroic moment where there's no talking.
It almost sounds like a really good idea for a video game composer who wants to get into scoring, is to kind of get themselves put on a game that has a lot of very cinematic cutscenes, so that you can kind of feel your way into those things, kind of like 5 minutes at a time in between stages, and then kind of branch out on that to short films, and then get into the big movie scores, etc.
Well, it'd be like the same idea of like when you're making sound design videos for video games, you take a trailer from a video game and then you just make sounds for it. You take everything out of it and you just do all the sounds that are on screen on this, like an E3 trailer.
Oh, that's cool.
But you do the opposite thing, is that you take is a scene from Metal Gear Solid, because their cutscenes are long.
Yep.
And then you just try and match the tone of what's going on to vibe, and then go from there.
Very cool. Looks like I was on the right track all along.
You got it.
I should be a pro at this.
You should be.
Not that I know anything about composing music at all, but I've listened to enough.
You know how to evaluate.
And I can produce my own podcasts. So we're going to move on to a controversial video game score. I'm only saying that because Ryan and I have already discussed this track a little bit, so I'm very curious about your opinions, sir. But we're going to listen to Dreamy Day Willow Down Farm from a game called Kinseed. This was released in early access on PC again in 2018. We should just call this Farm Games 2018 when we title the show. This was composed by Mathis Den Das. We'll be right back. Welcome back. That was Dreamy Day, Willowdown Farm from Kinseed. That was released on the PC in 2018 in early access, composed by Mathis Den Das. Kind of a study in violin swells and plucky acoustic guitars. I don't know. I like this one because of just the feeling of calm that I get when I listen to it. This was the first track that I picked for the show, and I was kind of excited to find this game because the developers were ex-Lionhead Studios guys. They wanted to make a game that was very similar to the Fable series, which Lionhead developed, and they wanted to do it in kind of a top-down pixel art style. And although this composer wasn't the Fable composer, he was a team member that worked on quality assurance for Fable, which is interesting. So this is his very first soundtrack, and he's made some cool stuff for it. In listening to this song a whole bunch of times, I kind of feel that it doesn't go very many places, and it might cause your mind to wander a little bit. But I feel like if you're playing a game along with this, it would just become a nice backdrop.
Would it?
However,
Would it though?
Ryan has told me that he has some major issues. He hates this song with every fiber of his being. And I haven't asked him why, because I wanted to save all his vitriol and bile for this. I'm going to be really embarrassed if the composer is actually listening, but so no, I mean, you said that the song was decent, you just had some issues with it. So why don't you finally share those so we can have a little discussion about this?
Well, decent. That's what I would use to describe the other songs on this soundtrack.
Ouch.
I know that as the VGMbassy, we are supposed to be nice and wonderful, but unfortunately, I have to tell you my honest opinions about things.
Honesty is the best policy.
Honesty is the best policy. The first policy is if you're going to use dissonant strings as your main ambient bed, you need to not make that the forefront of your mix.
Okay.
It just takes over everything. These dissonant strings, although, like, they're okay to like a certain point. They're like, okay, I can handle it for like 15 seconds. But when the whole song is dissonant strings, you need to find something else as your ambient bed. Like, I maybe use a synthesizer with a pad if that's going to be your ambience, something that's pleasant to the ears. It's not giving me sense of calm. It is giving me, when you use dissonant strings, you use it to cause tension. You use it to cause the feeling of emotion of, oh no, there's going to be a monster creeping around. But you're mixing these dissonant strings with happy guitar or chill guitar, which on the other hand is a very fake sounding nylon/acoustic guitar. So musically, I'm hearing sampled dissonant strings mixed with chill Guitar Pro sounding MIDI guitar. So my brain instantly is like, okay, I'm listening to something that's building tension because I'm listening to these dissonant strings that just will not go away. And they just take over. They're just so loud. So the mix I don't like.
Okay.
I also don't like that it doesn't go anywhere. It is a boring track.
Yeah.
And it's generic sounding. Like, there's no strong melody. All it is somebody plucking the guitar. It's the equivalent to someone just fiddling around the guitar for 5 minutes. It sounds like a demo that I would make. And the other aspect is those dissonant strings is the same sound of what happens when I'm composing a song and my east-west software glitches out and I'm using, let's say, a pedal to sustain the string, but then it doesn't shut off once I stop. So now I'm listening to my track playback and it's like, oh great, the strings are taking over the whole track because they just won't stop playing. It almost sounds like he made a mistake for that. Honestly, I can say that this track, when you compare the mixing of the last track of someone who understands film score, of how to mix symphonic, there is such a contrast in level of expertise. And it makes sense because this is his first video game.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any other scoring merits. So as a strict musical aspect and not a humanistic understanding aspect, I don't like this song. I don't like how it's mixed. It doesn't go anywhere. And if I was in the room with him, I would tell him these things. However, I have also heard the other songs that he has written. And those other songs do have some of the same issues in the sense of they're not always mixed great. They have too much blending between something that sounds fake and real. It's mixing in both camps. He doesn't quite have a perfect understanding of how to make it sound either super video gaming or super real.
Gotcha.
And so there's a bit of a contrast there. But being his first video game, he will learn, he will get better, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. That's my honest opinion to it, and that's why for 5 minutes and potentially a long duration of time, this would infuriate me.
Okay. You make a lot of valid points as a composer, and to my untrained ears, yes, I think mainly I was probably focusing more on the guitar and not necessarily so much on the strings in terms of my feeling of calmness for the song. But just like my wife who's into hobbyist photography, I'll look at a picture and say, oh, that's a nice picture of a house. And she'll look at the picture and go, no, the lighting is wrong here. It's overblown. The color's not good. The framing is wrong. And I'll just be like, oh, I thought it was a nice picture of a house. So I can, it's like tasting a fine wine and understanding the nuances in there. But I'm also glad that you acknowledge the fact that this is his first time out and see the potential that he might have in terms of, getting more experience, getting better. And I'm sure that he will get a lot of feedback on the soundtrack from, critics of the game, fellow composers, once this game is released. And, hopefully he'll be able to take those words of advice and experience and apply them to his next projects.
Well, when it's something that you deal with yourself, like I have the same issues. It's something that, because it's something that I am conscious of in my own writing and I struggle with because I have the same issues, I see it.
Yeah.
I see it elsewhere. I'm not a perfect composer. If you listen to my music, you'll find out that I do some stuff that is hot garbage.
I enjoy it.
I have a few good. Oh, okay, that's good. At least someone does.
But yeah, same with me. I mean, I listen to other people's podcasts and I'm like, oh, that was an editing glitch, or oh, your music bed's too loud. So I completely understand where you're coming from. When you are ensconced in a hobby or a skill or a craft of some sort, you become very critical of other people's crafts as well. So that said, let's talk a little bit about this game, because this game is actually really cool. It was developed and published by Pixel Count Studios. Like I said, they are made up entirely of ex-Lionhead Games devs, so the guys who did Fable, the Black and White series, all based out of England. And they are trying to create a game that has a lot of the Britishness and charm and humor and eccentricity that the original Fable series did. Fable is like, the series is a kind of love it or hate it kind of a thing. Have you ever played any of the Fable games?
I love it. I love Fable.
I love it too. Fable was, especially like Fable 2 and 3 were fantastic. I used to love going around and collecting all those gnomes that used to insult you. Do you remember that?
Yeah. The part that I really liked about Fable was how big it was, but yet how small it was in scope, that you could beat it in 15 to 20 hours, but it had a lot of replayability.
Right. And so many different branches and just ways that you can mold your own character. And they're trying to do that with this as well. They describe it themselves as a 2D sandbox RPG full of quirk and charm while invoking the spirit of past Fable games. Conceit is infused with their own ideas and a mix of British folklore, ancient legend, and rustic traditions. It feels like a lot of a mix between Zelda, Chrono Trigger, Stardew Valley, Fable. It's got a little bit of everything in there. There's a huge story involved. You span multiple generations, so you get married during the game, you get old, you pass away, your children become the playable characters, and then you take control of them, and you're basically farming and developing this land that you're on. And in the middle of the land is the Kinseed, which is a huge tree that's near your house. And every time, it's like directly connected to your family's lineage. So when you pass away, when your family passes away, and a new quote-unquote branch of the family becomes the main characters in the story, the tree will grow a new branch. And so how you progress in the story kind of dictates how the branches on this tree grow. So you kind of have a physical manifestation of your accomplishments throughout the game in the middle of your property, which is, it's neat. It's a cool little idea. It almost reminds me of like the Mana tree from Secret of Mana, something like that. Or the Deku tree in Legend of Zelda. I think they're getting a lot of inspiration from that kind of stuff. You can run shops, help neighbors, trade your goods at other towns, and farm your land for food and seeds. So, you know, there's lots of stuff to do as well as just farming. You have influence on the people in the town, just like in Fable. You do good deeds, they treat you like, you know, a friend, or they do favors for you. If you're evil, then they become scared of you. You know, you might be able to intimidate them into getting what you want instead of having them be nice to you and wanting to do favors or buying things at a discount or something like that. So they're taking a lot of that Fable-ishness and applying it to a 2D pixel art RPG, and it sounds really good. Maybe the music isn't the best in the world to listen to, but the art is absolutely fantastic. It's well animated. There's like light rays and shadows and a glorious color palette. Really, really nice artwork in this game. So I haven't played it yet, but I'm actually, this is one of the games I'm definitely going to pick up. It looks really, really good.
I agree. It does look really good. I like the art of it, and the music is good. Just not that one song.
Okay.
I have listened, like I said, I've listened to the other stuff. It is good. It does sound good.
Good.
But yeah, the game looks really nice. I like the way it looks. I see that it's still in early access. I was watching some gameplay video of it, and they're like, okay, this is new stuff that they've updated recently, and people are getting really excited. The people who have been following this have been really looking forward to when this fully releases, because it is looking good.
Yeah, Fable had kind of a rabid fan base, and a lot of that fan base, I think, is translating over to Kinseed. And also, just in his defense, this was one of the first 5 songs that were released for Kinseed for the very early access stuff, so I think this is a composition he created literally right out of the gate.
Yeah.
They're like, you know, hey, you want to be the composer? We've heard you compose music. And he's like, sure, okay. Lollipop, beanie on his head.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we had talked beforehand. I'm like, you're like, well, do you want to pick a different track? And I was like, well, if you don't want me to have my controversial bit on this, if you want me to say nice things about it, then you would have to pick another song. And I would say beautiful, nice things if you had picked other songs.
Yeah, but I felt this was a good opportunity for you to kind of throw some of your composer knowledge around. You know, having a little bit of critique on a song is good. It's not something that we do a lot on VGMbassy because we're a lot of video game music fans and don't necessarily have that kind of a training that you do. So for you to be able to come on the show and really kind of dive deeply into a piece of music like this and explain why you would make changes or how he could improve, I think adds a lot to the show. So I'm glad we were able to do that. So what other song do you want to ruin? What you got next? Jerk.
Well, I don't know. Well, I'm not going to ruin this song because it is really good.
Okay.
Off a really bad game. And when it comes to out to left field, this will probably be the most leftist of the most fieldist. It is Blue Lagoon / credits theme from the widely successful European-only release game Super Farm on the PlayStation 2 in 2003. Now, my French is weak, so Frédéric Mott is the composer, aka El Mobo.
Rockin' dude. All right, let's take a listen.
that was Blue Lagoon credits theme from Super Farm on the PS2 in 2003, composed by Frederick Moder, aka El Mobo. Yeet, as the kids say.
Very sleepy tune, you know? Extremely sleepy.
You just
Float right off.
go to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm tired. And then by tired, you mean of dancing my booty off.
Yes, wearing my zoot suit, sunglasses, carrying a saxophone on my back.
I'm off to my ska rehearsal.
Mom, you better have some pizza rolls ready for me when I get home.
Gotta get my bowling shirt on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this was a great tune. Very, very different from what we've been listening to for the entirety of the show so far. I love that breakdown. Like I was telling you, it almost has a very Latin or Mexican kind of Hispanic feel, whatever you want to go there. And then it just picks right back up into this very, very ska, kind of crazy beat. And I've heard a lot of Frederick Mott music, both demo scene and traditional quote-unquote VGM, and he writes in so many different genres and does them all so well that I should not have been surprised that he could do this kind of crazy ska-like tune along with everything else. So how did you even find out about this game?
Well, in my list of 50 different games, it had the name Farm in it. So then I looked at it, and when I saw it, I could not believe what I was looking at. It is a farm, and it is super. And I would say that this music is too good for this game, but unfortunately, the game is actually decent. The concept is ludicrous. It is unbelievable. I told Ed very early on, you need to watch the intro scene to this game. It is Ren and Stimpy madness.
Yeah. It's like Ren and Stimpy meets Wallace and Gromit. Is what it felt like to me.
Do you want me to describe what happens?
Go for it. I would love to hear your description of this.
So you are treated to this beautiful early 2000s CGI of 4 farmyard superhero creatures on the farm picking straws to see who is going to dress up in drag. And then they have the craziest look in their eyes and they're about to have some sort of way. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, as you see transitioning between scene to scene, a voluptuous turkey by the name of Pamela strolls into the scene, and luckily the one farmyard animal is no longer endangered of potential ill will. And now they are now going to try and procure and impress this voluptuous turkey hen by whatever means necessary.
Some sort of mating ritual.
Yes. So the bulk of the game it's a party game. And I played it. I was expecting it to have the most garbage of controls because it looks like an early 2000s party game.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised. It is tight, it is crisp. So the relative idea of the game is there is an item that you need to procure for Pamela, and then there's stages. And some of these stages are airports, the farm, whatever. There's 10 animals that you can play as, but the story mode is there's 4. It's like a goat, a pig, some other creatures. And you all have superhero powers. Or you just dress up as superheroes, therefore the name's Super, and then they're farmyard animals. Thus the name Farm.
Makes sense.
There's no actual farming, but it is a party game. So there's an item you need to procure at the end of the stage, and there's items that you can use, like gas, you can fart.
Nice.
Or there is a shovel you can beat your opponent with. And so you go to the stage, you grab the item, and you bring it back, and you have to bring, let's say, 10 perfume bottles to Pamela. And then you will win her favors. But what ends up always happening at the end of the stage as the game progresses is that she runs away, or you capture her, or she goes to someplace else, and you have to go do this all over again. So you go through each stage through a great series of events of,
she runs away to this supermarket, and I gotta grab things at the supermarket. But it's a lot of fun to actually like go get the item, and then you have this strategy of, oh, this person's going to beat me, so now instead of trying to grab the perfume bottle, I'm going to smash him with a shovel, and then grab the perfume bottle, bring it back to her, and throw it for myself. So it is actually a decently played game, and the music is a bangin'.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't really give you a chance to comment much on the song. So what are your impressions? Like, what is did you listen to the other tracks on this soundtrack, and how do they compare to this one?
They're all very funk. They're all very fun. Like, the whole album, it is good. But you can tell by his bass work that he is a bassist first.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can tell by how strong that vibe is, how present in the mix that his bass guitar is. There is such a beautiful balance between fake instrumentation and real instrumentation. He really knows how to mix it well, because you can tell that these instruments are sample based just by, honestly, most musicians do not have access to, unless you have an orchestra, you don't have access to all this stuff. But it is that perfect balance of, okay, I can tell that's a real bass guitar that you're playing, or at least it's a really well sampled one.
Yeah.
I doubt he's actually playing trumpet. I doubt he has the xylophone work going on, but it sounds so good. It's so well mixed, and it really has that Grant Kirkhope vibe and playfulness, and so it does elude the emotion of, it's a party game. It's a little hectic, but it's also a lot of fun, and it's crazy, which this game is. It is crazy, and I would highly suggest anybody who is listening to this, don't watch it with your children.
No.
But you should check out the intro cinematic, because it is wild.
Yeah, we should drop that in the Discord when the show comes out. I think that'll be a lot of fun to get everybody commenting on it. We'll put up a little not suitable for work tag next to it. But to your comment on his ability to use sampled instruments really well, I think that really stems from the fact that he started creating music on the Amiga, which was a sample-based music system, the Paula sound chip, and very little memory for your instruments. So you really had to pack your samples into a very small space, and you only had 4 channels to work with. So limitations equal innovations. So he spent a lot of time trying to make music sound good on 4 channels of limited memory. And I've played a few tracks from him on Impulse Project that are these like glorious 7-minute long prog rock epics, all in 4-channel sample-based Amiga music, and they sound absolutely incredible. Like, obviously you can tell that they're sampled, but just the fact that the song I'm referencing came out like probably 15 to 20 years before this one did, that just shows you how much experience he has with those kind of sample-based instrumentation techniques. And so, you know, the things that you think are real instruments might not actually be real instruments. That might be a sampled bass for all we know. He's just that good at doing that stuff. So it was fun to listen to this. He's done a lot of stuff in funk. He's done a lot of stuff in metal. He's done a lot of stuff in just really kind of fantasy orchestration and very traditional sounding bouncy kid style video game music. Like, you throw a genre at him and he will create incredible sounds for you. He's just that talented.
He doesn't look like he has quite a bit of games under his belt, but it doesn't look like has, at least from this list. I obviously don't know all the games, but I see The Fifth Element. I don't recall that being a very good game.
Yeah, no.
It seems like he has the, I make really good music for games that aren't that great, at least from the look that I see from this games list that he's made. He has the great composer to, well, not necessarily terrible video game, but nothing that really is like, this is my breakout game.
Yeah. Nightmare Creatures and Nightmare Creatures 2 were pretty good. I don't know if you remember those. Those were on like the PlayStation 1 and the Dreamcast, kind of like horror-based third-person action games. Those were pretty good. One of the ones, as far as like Amiga music fans go, Fury of the Furries is like one of his most well-known and popular soundtracks, as well as the Brainies. Those are both really, really good. So, yeah, he's got some decent games to his name, but I think Amiga games were judged a little bit differently than we judge them nowadays, just because people were growing up with 1 or 2 games under their belt and learned to love the games that may not have had the smoothest gameplay in the world, you know?
It seems to me that he is like, the games that he has done on are very niche, but very good in the sense of like the music he's writing, and perhaps it's just like not mainstream, I guess.
When I was doing Pixel Tunes, I came up with the concept of the law of awesome, which means that and specifically in terms of Western composed, Western developed video games, is that if you have an amazing game composer, you have to sacrifice the quality of your game. They have to balance each other out. Good game, not so good music. Great music, not so good game. You can apply that almost to every single Western developed game up to like the non-chiptune era, and I guarantee you it'll work most of the time. Law of awesome. So if you got El Mobo on your team, don't expect to make a good game. It's just the way it goes. All right, man. Got anything else to talk about before we move on to our next track?
No, nothing to do with this. I'm all tapped out.
All right. I have, let's see, my track number 4. Oh, this one's a fun one. This is a track called Tavern from a game called Graveyard Keeper. This was released on Linux, Mac, Switch, PS4, PC, Xbox One in 2018. Again, composed by Hamza El Hamri. Be right back. All right, folks, put down your glasses of grog. That was Tavern from Graveyard Keeper, released on Linux, Mac, Switch, PS4, PC, and Xbox One in the year of our Lord 2018, composed by Hamza El Hamri. I appreciate this one because it really took me back to games of old. Parts of it remind me of music that you might find in like Secret of Monkey Island, but then other parts like the instrumentation I thought would fit really well if it were kind of like Super Nintendo-ified to appear in a game like Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana, something like that. It had kind of almost like a square village or town RPG tune kind of a feel of it for me too. So I think that this is a great tavern song as well. It feels like kind of like a drinking tune. It's got a nice little sway. Instruments that kind of come in and out. There's a lot of instrumentation in there that's really tucked away, like little piano twinkles and a little flute that might trill in here and there, but it never takes the spotlight and just kind of really accompanies the lead melody. So I thought those were all qualities of a really good composer, that he's not trying to make every single piece have a huge spotlight and take your focus away from what the main meat and potatoes of the song is. I don't know, what do you think? Are you kind of in the same boat as I am with that thought?
I'm getting some strong Dungeons and Dragons vibes.
Yeah, I can see that too.
It would be a great backdrop for a session. To me, the way this is not necessarily mixed, but the way it is created and crafted definitely has the room created in mind. So sometimes when you create music, you're creating music to create a certain vibe or a certain theme or a melodic idea. The other way is by a performance based, as to what if I was in the room with these performers?
Right.
So the way that I see how this works and how it all comes together is you're sitting there in a tavern, and over there on the stage, there's a guy playing, and it's not an acoustic guitar. It is definitely like a bray harp or something of that nature that's taking that role. That's the rock and that's the foundation. And then there's someone beside him who's playing the flute. There's someone beside him who's playing all these instruments. The way that this is all put together is like, I'm sitting in a tavern, there is someone on the stage, they are actually playing this music, and this is the music that is playing when I'm sitting in there with them. It has this vibe that I'm supposed to be feeling like, yeah, I'm having a good time, I'm sitting in a tavern, I'm drinking. It's exactly doing what this song is supposed to be doing.
Right.
And it's great.
Yeah, I think that's called diegetic music. I think we've talked about that a couple times in the past couple episodes, where you are hearing what the characters in the game are actually hearing. And I really love that.
Now, I don't know if there's actually a band playing in the game itself, but it does give the impression that it could be.
Yeah. Or at least, maybe a band on the street outside and the music is wafting in somehow. But I feel like, that really sets the tone for what a tavern would sound like in what the designers call the most inaccurate medieval cemetery management sim of the year.
Mm-hmm. This game is wild.
Yeah, no, this game is neat. And it feels like almost a parody of a lot of the games that we've been talking about. So it was developed by Lazy Bear Games, published by Tiny Build Games and MP Digital. You can build and manage your own graveyard, and it lets you cheat. There are ways that you can cut costs. You can expand into entertainment with witch-burning festivals, scare nearby villagers into attending church. It's basically like the devs call it a game of capitalism. You do whatever it takes to build a thriving business. And what I like is that the tavern is actually intricately linked to the farming aspect of the game. So you can plant vegetables, you can plant cabbage, carrots, beets, etc. by befriending the farmer that's in the town, but you can also harvest resources to build trellises for grapevines, and you can use those grapes to create wine. You can grow hops and barley, you can create beer, and when you ferment the beer, you go through the whole distillation process and the fermentation process of whatever alcoholic beverages you're creating, and then you can sell those alcoholic beverages to the tavern, and then reap the rewards and possibly go into the tavern and get drunk on the stuff that you brewed yourself. So, literally the circle of life, you know?
The circle of life!
I can just see, like, some drunken guy, like, holding a beer up into the sun, a la the beginning of Lion King. But I thought that was a really cool aspect, and I haven't seen any other games anywhere which have kind of mimicked the process of distilling, fermenting alcoholic beverages. And because my wife, one of her thousands of hobbies is brewing her own beer, I thought that was really cool. And so I had kind of a background of how that whole process goes. So seeing it from literally planting the seeds to going through the whole process and getting that, barrel of aged beer at the end was really cool. And I like that fact, and I like the fact that you can kind of create a business for yourself. You can concentrate on the whole brewing beer aspect of it, or you can concentrate on using nefarious means to create more bodies to bury in your cemetery and thereby earning money from that. There are a lot of different cool things you can do in this game, and a lot of it reminded me of Fable in a sense that you can befriend villagers, you can intimidate them, basically do different things to be able to get what you want. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to playing this game. This is another one on this list that I'm definitely going to go and download. Your thoughts on this? What do you think about this kind of gameplay?
Well, first of all, your talk of making barley. I have thoughts on beer and little farm facts for you. So there's two types of barley. There is what is a malt barley, and then there is a feed barley. Such as example is Copeland. And the process of making malt barley that is used to use in alcohol or chocolate or goodies, there's a lot of determining factors to whether or not your barley will make malt. It has to do with the level of moisture, the level of protein, its germination. There's all these specific criteria that it has to make in order for barley to make malt. So I don't know if this game is actually taking all the factors of whether or not the barley you're buying is indeed the right criteria or even the right type of barley.
My guess is it doesn't get that specific.
Okay, just wondering.
Just from the looks of the game.
You're not going out there and saying, yes, I actually need 11% protein. You've got 14. That's too high, actually. I can't accept.
Right. Let's look at the weather and manage our watering versus how much it's going to rain over the next week.
Yeah.
This game seems to kind of stray away from all of those details and more focus on the fun part of the actual farming process.
People want to deal with the fun parts of farming? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You want to have your cake and eat it, apparently.
Right. You just want to look at the cows and go, hi, moo-moo.
There we go. You don't have to deal with the slaughter.
Yeah.
Anyways, segue to happiness. I found when I was watching the gameplay video and you said the witch burning, and I watched that, I was like, oh, this is a real thing. And then he went to like the church and it's like, here, you should just start preaching sermons for the people. Sermons and faith equals power. And it's like, oh my goodness. You're talking about inquisitions? This game's getting dark on me.
Yeah, this game is nuts. And like I said, it's only as dark as you want it to be. So you can kind of bypass that stuff if either A, you're not comfortable, or B, you just want to go on a more quote unquote righteous path. Or, like the dark path in Fable, you can lead by fear and intimidation and, make money by burying more bodies in your cemetery by whatever means necessary. So it looks really, really cool. It looks like a good kind of satire on farm sim games. It looks like a real good satire on specifically like Harvest Moon and stuff like that. So,
well, to do with satire, I was looking at this gameplay video and people in the comments have some great titles for this game, such as Stardew Death Valley or Harvest Moon Dead People Edition. I've always wanted to play as Dampe from Kakariko Village.
One of them, I think, called it Poo Simulator 2018, just because of the abnormally large focus on using manure as fertilizer for your plantation. So,
Harvest Moon, but the crops and livestock are corpses.
Yep, it's good stuff.
There you go.
Very good stuff. So,
got your taglines.
If you've got a dark sense of humor, I think this game will definitely fit. A little about the composer, Hamza El Hamri. He's from Tunis, Algeria. Other soundtracks he's worked on have been Swag and Sorcery and High Strategy Urukhan. He has a little write-up on his SoundCloud. He says, "Hi, my name is El Hamri Hamza. I've been passionately making music under the name of Hamza Notes and Hamza Productions since 2012. I've started working as a freelancer and ghost producer for various projects such as advertising videos, songs, movies, video games, scoring, and many other projects. Since 2016, I've been working on video games as a composer and a sound designer. Despite never considering myself being bound to a genre, I predominantly work in the indie music genres: retro, simple orchestral, electronic pop, and jazz." And that does pretty much cover the entire indie music run.
Yep.
As far as games like this are concerned. But yeah, not a composer I was familiar with before this, and I really like this soundtrack, so I'm hoping he expands his horizons and works on some more games, and we get to hear more from him in the future. But I feel like we're getting on to the final tracks of our show. I think you've got one more song left, sir.
I sure do.
And this one's a doozy.
Oh yeah, this is quite the game. It is the game. And what a segue from, I did ghost producing, to licensed tracks. Now, this one is called Main Title Theme / Tread Fast from Farming Simulator 17, released on PC, PS4, Mac, Xbox One, released in 2017. It is composed by Tom Peters and Greg McDonald and has been licensed by Audio Network.
All right, let's take a listen. Be right back. Yeehaw.
Howdy, that was Main Title Theme, or Tread Fast, from Farming Simulator 17, released on the PC, PS4, Mac, Xbox One, in the year 2017. Composed by Tom Peters and Greg McDonald. Licensed by Audio Network.
If that was treading fast, I don't ever want to tread slow. No, but great track, man. I'm just going to let you discuss this because I feel like a lot of your positive notes on this are going to be the same as mine. So,
All right.
go for it.
So, as someone who is currently writing music for an agricultural company right now, when I hear this song, this is the epitome of agriculture. You have bluegrass flair. It is radio friendly, and it is the perfect balance of cheesy, simple, and just such a strong melodic idea. It is very well produced. The instrumentation is, from what I can tell, it's live instrumentation. You have professionally recorded session musicians. Everything about this track just screams professional radio jingle or commercial TV.
Yeah.
And because of that, when I'm trying to write music that is supposed to be for a commercial, you need to strike the balance of having a strong melodic idea that does not interfere with a voiceover. And you need to have a vibe and a feel. And this vibe and feel behind it, it's so happy. It's so very bluegrass that I love this song because although I do not like country music, I do appreciate bluegrass. And luckily, bluegrass is all the elements of country music that I would like without the pop country lyrics and tonality.
Yeah.
You just have this Western vibe that just, it feels good.
Totally agree. And I'm also a real big fan of the production on this track as well. I love acoustic guitar that kind of fills out the whole stereo space, and you can almost pick out each string as it vibrates, and they each get their own kind of space in that stereo fill out.
That is a beautiful sounding guitar.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, I mean, it's just everything about it is professional. Everything about it is just nice to listen to. I found this song in a couple of different places on YouTube, and it was amazing how many like actual real farmers were commenting about how they put this on their phone, listen to it in their headphones, like while they're in their tractors, like tilling the land and, you know, harvesting and stuff. And it's just, it goes to show that it's, like you said, it's such a kind of authentic mood for that vocation that people will use it to enhance their experience while they're outside in real life doing real farming. So I think that's a grade A success for the composers if, you know, real farming folk are out there doing real farming to their tunes.
Now, the reason why it has two titles between title theme and Tread Fast is because it is a licensed song. The actual song itself is called Tread Fast,
right?
But it is just the title theme. And now Farm Simulator 17, all of their music is licensed through Audio Network, which is a German company, as I'm pretty sure Farming Simulator in general is just created by a German company. So you have a wide variety of music. So it's just basically the whole game is them having a catalog of composers made by this company. Audio Network is, for all intents and purposes, it is just like Audio Jungle. It is just a repository of music that you can just pick from with their on-staff composers who are all hired out. If, as far as I'm aware, I could apply to work there and then like, yeah, okay, just write us a bunch of different tracks and then we'll just sell them out. And then you get your royalty check.
Yeah, they'll just pay you a flat rate or whatever. It's cool. So have you played this game at all before?
I have played Farming Simulator right after seeding. And what can I tell you? It is authentic, and I do not want to play it.
A little too real?
Because it is authentic. Yeah. It is authentic enough in the sense of like, okay, you see a whole bunch of small, minute details in the game. And you're like, okay, this is a bit excessive. But then there's other aspects. You're like, okay, you've neglected this. If you're going to be a true farming simulator, you've neglected certain aspects of it.
Right.
So like when I was playing it, it was kind of cool to like, okay, it puts me through this tutorial. And the thing is, like, the tutorial pretty much takes you through the whole game, other than like all the other different aspects of it, because there is animal husbandry, there is forestry stuff, so you can cut down trees, there's combining, there's seeding, there's baling, there's every aspect that has to do with farming. They've got real brands that I recognize, equipment that I have.
Nice.
But the thing is, like, you start off, it's like there's realism mode and then there's like easy mode. I was like, okay, let me try realism. And they're like, it's gonna more reflect what real economy is gonna look like instead of video game economy. The biggest difference that I noticed with this game is just the size of scale. The fields that you harvest are tiny in comparison to real fields.
Yeah.
Which you kind of have to. So, I mean, you're getting massive equipment that could not sustain this size of land. Like, they're talking like you're the combine that you're driving, you need 3,000 acres of land in order to use it. Right. And you're really harvesting, which looks like 10 acres. So the aspect that I thought was really cool is, okay, well, you get in the combine. You have to start the combine. Okay, let's start the combine. Okay, now that I've started the combine, now you got to turn on your threshers. It's like, okay, I actually have to engage my threshers. I got to actually turn on the threshing drive in my combine. Okay, now that my threshers are on, you got to open up the hatch, the top hatch. It's like, well, my combine doesn't have a top hatch, but whatever, that's cool. This is a different model than mine. And then you got to turn on your header, and it just goes through all of these steps of like what I actually have to do. And then it's like all these minute things that you have to drop your header. You have to go forward. So in that sense, like it tells you to engage the PTO. It tells you to unfold your equipment. So it's all things that, yes, it actually happens. The scale, there's small, minute things that it's missing a few steps, but like because of the size of the scale, like for example, like if we're combining a field, we comb out an area, then we plant a semi with 2 trailers on it, which is known as a Super B. As a truck sim guy, you would know Super Bs, tandems, all those terminology as a truck sim guy. But yeah, we park it on the field, we go, I mean, there's grain carts, there's so much equipment in this game that we actually use. And I could tell you so much about farming in this game.
It's just like going to work, coming home, and going to work.
And that's the problem, is because a lot of this game is idle.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's the management side, which you pick equipment, but then it's like you can also hire out workers in this game. So you don't actually have to sit in the vehicle, but it costs you money. But the basic idea is, okay, I have a field. Drive forward for 45 seconds, turn around, drive forward. So now I'm driving back and forth for 15 minutes to finish a field. This is what I do during harvest, but for 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours a day. Now, the other aspect, which is not realistic, is equipment breakdown. Equipment breaks down a whole lot in real life.
I bet.
You take rocks through the combine.
And I bet, so it just kind of wears down on a set kind of scale on Farming Simulator?
That part I don't know.
You haven't gotten that far?
I didn't get far enough in the game. No, I only played the tutorial because after like a half an hour playing, I was like, okay, I get this game.
Yeah.
Now there's like the aspect of like animals in it too, and animal husbandry, raising cows, the whole thing. But that part is pretty much, it's the same as it would be like in Harvest Moon or any of those other kind of games. It's you raise animals, you gotta chop down feed, you gotta bale it, you gotta feed them, you gotta pitch the bales, all that sort of thing.
It's interesting because I have a wheel and a pedal with a stand, and I wanted a little more control in my truck sim games, so I bought a farming simulator control panel for my steering wheel that I use for the truck controls in my truck sim games. But it's just this giant control panel of buttons, and it's got this analog stick with a couple buttons on top, and it's I guess it's originally made to, you can use the analog control stick to move the equipment that's attached to the tractor and stuff like that. So I have, like you said, it comes with Xbox Game Pass. So if you have Xbox Game Pass, you can download Farming Sim 17 and play it. So I've technically got like a lot of equipment in my basement right here to like drive a tractor with like decent controls. So I'm kind of thinking about maybe checking it out and seeing what it's all about.
I would suggest using those tractor controls because the controllers with your hands, it is very complicated.
Yeah, I bet.
Because there's so many aspects of it, and because you can do them in any sort of sequence you want to like turn on all these things, you have to like fiddle with D-pad configuration, so hit to the left to give you, and then hold a trigger and then cycle through options. But it's like you have to like cycle over it. It's just super counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Just to actually, it took me like 5 minutes to turn on and get my combine going, just because I'm fiddling through all these different items and options to deal with, just to try and get going.
There's 50 more actions available to you than there are buttons on the controller. So
yeah, like it'd be like you need a keyboard.
All right, well, I will definitely give that a try, and I will let you know what I think about it. That sounds, I'm not gonna say it sounds fun. It sounds intriguing. And then I'll determine whether or not that intrigue turns into fun, or, oh my god, I can see what Ryan is talking about. I'm falling asleep.
Probably just like Truck Sim, you either love it or you think it's boring. I know people that just love it. They just think it's so relaxing.
That's the thing, is that I find the truck sim stuff cathartic, and it's got a built-in radio that you can use within the game, so I'll set up my favorite podcasts, and I'll listen to podcasts while I drive a truck down the highway for, a couple hours at a clip. So I end up kind of killing two birds with one stone. But you briefly talked about hiring people to do the work for you in Farming Simulator 17, and that plays right into the theme of the next and last game we're going to feature on the show, which is called Autonauts. And we're going to listen to Play Theme Night from the game. This was released on the PC in 2019, composed by Colin Anderson, aka Pilot Not Flying. Be right back. All right, that was the nighttime play theme from Autonauts. This was released in 2019 for the PC, composed by Colin Anderson, aka Pilot Not Flying. I saved one of my favorite ones for last. I really like the down-tempo, super chill Latin jazz vibe of this song. What'd you think about it, Ryan?
I love bossa nova in the sense of I like to listen to it from time to time. I love the vibe of that. It doesn't stray too far away from the staples of it. I think it does a really good sense of emulating that genre, and it finds it and it picks it really good.
Yeah, it's one of those genres that I find myself loving, like when I hear it in VGM, but I don't actively like search it out to listen to. I'm the same with funk. Like, give me some funk VGM and it'll be like my favorite song of all time, and I'll groove the hell out to it. But I'm not gonna go out and like search for funk bands, and I don't know why. But I feel like maybe I should start doing that.
It's because bossa nova is very one-dimensional.
That's true. It's immediately recognizable.
There is a specific tempo,
Yeah.
a specific beat of the do 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 do. The syncopation and the rhythm is very rigid in the sense of it stays within that jazz style.
Yeah.
And if you go outside of that syncopated rhythm, you've strayed out right out of bossa nova. It's not like acid jazz and other types of jazz where it's like we freeform. This is a very specific subgenre of Portuguese/Brazilian music that was developed, is a new wave or a new trend of a fusion of samba and jazz created in the 60s and 50s. And like the bossa nova rhythm of quarter, eighth rest, eighth note, quarter rest, quarter rest, quarter, eighth note, and then a quarter note, dotted quarter note sort of feel is like, that's just the way it is.
And that's it. You can't do anything else with it. I haven't even seen this genre like incorporated into like jazz fusion or anything like that. It really seems to kind of sit by itself. I think we played one song on the Katamari Damacy episode, that one song by Senior Coconut, which did kind of incorporate a little bit of bossa nova into kind of a glitchy techno kind of song. But that sounded so unique because I think it's really like one of the only times I've ever heard this genre kind of explode out into any other kind of other genre. So that's really interesting. And I guess that's a really good explanation as to why this feels so familiar, because we've all kind of heard it before.
If you were to create a dynamic track using bossa nova, it would work really good because everything would be the same rhythm. And then just like in jazz, you could just weave in and out with melodies. So although you can have lots of different bossa nova music, as the casual listener, you won't be able to tell the intricate differences. I guess it would be a rather elitist sort of deal.
Kind of like a wine expert or something like that, where you can, to differentiate the individual flavors that dance on your tongue as you drink wine. You'll need to have that experience to really enjoy individual bossa nova songs. Anyways, a little bit about Autonauts. So it was developed by Denki Games and published by Curve Digital. And what I like about this game and why I want to play it so much with Logan, I think he'd really be into this, is because it's all about exploration, crafting, and automation. So you start kind of very similar to like My Time at Portia or Staxel, where you inherit some land, it's kind of run down. Your goal is to cultivate the land, make it a successful piece of land. But the way you do it in this game is by automating as much of it as possible. So visually, very simple game, very similar to Minecraft, but you harvest parts and resources from the land. You create technology. So you will, at first, create some very simple machines, like, for instance, I'm just spitballing here, but like maybe a scythe on a post that somehow with steam power you can make it spin around to harvest wheat and stuff like that. And gradually, as you go throughout the game, your level of technology increases. Pretty soon you're creating simple steam engines that roam around the property and collect the resources and bring it back for you. Your technology grows even more. Pretty soon you have robots that do fishing for you. You have giant machines that go over rails on top of farmland and literally pick apples off of trees or harvest corn or whatever. And so your whole thing is, instead of the intricacies of farming, it's more the intricacies of finding ways to effectively make the farm self-sufficient and basically farm itself, which I thought was really cool. It gives a little bit more of an inventive maker aspect to the whole farm genre of game. And I know Logan really, really loves that stuff, so I have a feeling he'd really enjoy it. What would you think about having a completely automated farm?
Well, it makes me think about how it already is so very automated. Because a lot of the things in which we used to do with farming has been turned into machines instead of just real people. My sister's ex-husband is from Japan, and his mom is a Kobe beef producer.
Neat.
It's technically called Awaji beef. It's like the Wagyu beef that you hear so famously. It's just, this stuff is from Awaji Island and Kobe, those specific places. And so they got the whole, cow stall, massaging, things like that. But they also have rice fields. And because rural Japan does not have the equipment that we have, they have to do everything by hand. So they have to plant things by hand. They have to go by and chop things down and pick them up. And they have tiny fields in comparison to now. Like with 4,000 or 5,000 acres, you need heavy machinery.
Yeah.
We're talking about a machine that's called the combine, because it has combined all these small features that we used to do independently. So you have the cutting knives that are on the header, and those to go into a canvas that feeds to the middle. And beforehand, you'd have to go out there with a scythe. You'd have to go chop it down. So it takes that material, it sends it to the middle with the canvas, and then it feeds into the feeder house and into the threshing house, which then threshes it, which spins with the high-speed rotors. So instead of taking all that raw material, the straw and the head, and taking it back and going to the threshing floor, which you would then beat it on the ground, it now goes into the combine and it threshes. All the seeds fall out into the belly pan or the sifts, and then they shake and they shimmy and they separate the wheat from the chaff or whatever other chaff you have. And then it sends it up into the hopper bins, and then you go to wherever you take it. And
That's
all
crazy.
those features have now been automated. Now all I gotta do is turn on the threshers, turn on my header, go through it, and then drive right through the crop. Now, the other cool aspect is that we also have GPS. So you can now set all those things, set it, and then your tractor/combine drives for you.
Wow.
And so it's become so very automated where you are literally sitting in there just to turn around and in case something goes terribly wrong. A lot of farming has become automated.
Interesting. I had no idea.
So last year it was so wet that we had to take everything off and put it into a grain dryer. So in that operation, it goes into a hopper bin. In that hopper bin is an automatically timed auger, which then feeds into another auger, which then feeds up into the grain dryer. The grain dryer automatically turns on heat and the air, and then feeds into another bin. It has sensors to tell you the bin is full, the bin is empty, to turn it off. And so all of that is, I fill the bin myself, and then it runs through the whole cycle by itself. It is all automated.
That's awesome.
We are doing the work that would take hundreds of people, and there's 4 of us to combine 5,000 acres, to seed it, all this stuff with our automated equipment. So when you talk about a video game using those same principles of automation, we already have. It's just in a video game, the scale is so tiny in comparison to what we are already doing.
Yeah. That's really cool. And I guess this automation is a little more cartoony and fanciful than, what you guys are doing, because there were literal robots hanging out with people and fishing with them in this game. Mm-hmm. So I think for kids, it would make it a little bit more fun, but at the same time, it might get them thinking more about new ways to innovate automation for farms and what have you. So that's cool. I think it's a really cool learning experience too, for them to see the progression of technology and maybe to kind of experience in a parallel way how farms used to work, and then the different kinds of innovations that helped make a 100-person team be able to pare down into a 4-person team to create the same amount of work done. So very, very interesting.
The game itself looks really cute and looks really fun.
Yeah.
And it all borrows from like the same concept, which is so interesting that one game like Harvest Moon that takes this one concept has spurred so many different types of games and so many different ways of approaching the same idea, which is farming.
Yeah. It was a really open blueprint, I think, and I'm happy that game got to be so popular and was so well produced in the first place, because I think it's old enough now, at least the original SNES version is, that a lot of the individuals that grew up playing that first Super Nintendo game, they're now of the age where they are producing games. So that, you know, a lot of the developers for these games, I'm sure, were directly influenced by those first Harvest Moon series games. So that's kind of like what they owe all of this to, and I think that's really neat. A little bit about Colin Anderson. He's from Dundee, Scotland. He's the managerial director of Denki Games. He started off working on some high-profile titles like Lemmings, Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2. They became really popular audio-wise for their innovation of using the radio stations on their games, and Colin Anderson was responsible for innovating that concept, writing a lot of the content that appeared on those radio stations, which was really cool. And then eventually branched out from Rockstar and formed Denki Games. They've released hundreds of games under Denki Games. A lot of them are, you know, more simple mobile games and stuff, but then they're making more complicated PC games like this. He's also in a rock band called Under the Dome, and they combine elements of rock and electronic music that sounds pretty cool. So I think we've had a lot of composers on this show that are pretty accomplished. Some of them are brand new, but some very accomplished composers that we've never had the opportunity to focus on before because we haven't played a lot of games in their genres, and I thought that was really neat.
I have a question for you, Ed. It's about your opinions on something.
Okay.
So we have someone from Scotland writing a track known as, or a style such as bossa nova. What is your opinions and feelings about cultural appropriation in the sense of music?
Well, here's the deal, is that this is a professional composition, right? So he's not saying that I'm creating a traditional Latin game and this bossa nova style is part of the overarching culture of the game itself. I think he just took a style of music that he really likes and added it into the game. I think it's more of an homage and a, you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery kind of thing. You know, like you said before, halfway through the show, video game composers are expected to visit so many different genres and have so many different tentacles reaching out into different aspects of game audio that to take a genre like bossa nova or to write in a genre like that tavern music, for instance. You know, he was from Algeria and he's creating very European medieval style music. It's part of the job, and I think it's expected of them to be able to create these musics, to create these moods. And it might be a little impractical to try to get, you know, those cultural people to write their own cultural music for every single video game piece of music out there.
It's just something that I've thought about that I've never, like, for example, if I wanted to write a song for a Japanese game, should I, as a Western composer, attempt to write an entirely Japanese-esque orchestra? It's just something that I've thought about, and it's so wonderful that, like, in music that you are able to expand, because I don't think anybody is writing music outside of their regular culture ever in the sense of mockery. It is always out of a state of appreciation, because I'm not going to write music that is a style that I don't like. I'm going to write music that I love, regardless of where it is. It's just something that I've thought about, and I've never really had that discussion about cultural appropriation when it comes to music composition.
Your example brings up a very recent kind of, I'm not going to call it controversy, but discussion that's come up about Ghost of Tsushima, because that's an entirely Western developed game that takes place entirely in Japanese culture. And so there have been a lot of articles and discussions online about cultural appropriation versus homages and paying respect, etc., etc. So you get lots of people from lots of different cultures, including Japanese culture, kind of weighing in on what they think about that kind of thing happening. So, those, especially from the musical perspective, those articles might give you some insight as to whether or not you feel is appropriate. So,
and to circle back, as a farmer, watching all these people make video games who probably have never farmed in their lives. Is it cultural appropriation for people to make farming games if they've never farmed before?
And some of them seem to do a pretty good job. I think, like you've said, some of them have a decent idea of what's going on. Some of them, maybe like in the case of Autonauts, maybe they came up with, this whole automation thing, and without realizing exactly how much automation there already exists on farmland. So I think that's an interesting kind of concept too, to kind of determine whether they're sacrificing realism for fun or whether they're using realism and programming it in a way that it becomes fun, but also an accurate portrayal of what goes on farmland. So that's a discussion we can have on Discord, which you can find by heading over to the VGMbassy.com and clicking on the Discord link on the right side of the screen. Also hit us up on Twitter at VGMbassy and on Facebook at facebook.com/group/the VGMbassy. And if you want to hear more stuff from us, Embassy Exclusive is on temporary hiatus, but you can head over to patreon.com/the VGMbassy. And for a small donation, you can gain access to all of the existing MC exclusive podcasts and all future podcasts when quarantine is lifted and we were able to get more out there to you. Anyways, Ryan, thank you so much, dude. This was probably one of the most informative shows I've ever had. I've learned more about farming than I think I would ever have seeked out on my own. And we got to talk about a lot of really interesting games that I also never would have probably discovered if it hadn't been for this suggestion. So thank you.
You're welcome. This has been a super mega episode, as I have taken the VG Embassy by force, by forcing my way into this place and forcing myself upon all of these wonderful people.
Well, you snuck in through the grain silo, so I will give you a points for your ninja skills in that.
There we go.
But so as far as your composition stuff goes and the games that you've worked on, where can we find your stuff on the web?
I'm assuming you can put www in front of all of these, but catlandiagame.com. There's also the Catlandia Twitter. If you go on Steam and type in Catlandia, Crisis at 4 Paw Print, you will find that game. That's the kiddie mobile game, 2D RPG, Souls-like difficulty for some people. We created a battle system that requires on exposure, in the sense of you expose the enemy and you get critical hits, and that is absolutely key to winning the battles, is understanding the combat system.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the biggest thing that we talked about, was we created an adaptive difficulty to be okay, how about we scale this back to make it less difficult? But yeah, that game's there. Been working on it for a long time. We got some new hot DLC coming out, hopefully within the next month or so. We'll see. I don't have a set time, but I've got some brand new hot tracks coming out. I will have a Bandcamp at some point. When that DLC drops, I will be dropping the OST for the game at the same time. I have a SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.com/Ryan Steele Productions. It is not up to date. I have, as of today of this recording, uploaded one of the Catlandia songs. So I actually have a song on there that is not 3 years old. The other game that I'm working on, which is going into early access, there's a demo on Steam, is Pandora, Chains of Chaos. You can find their Twitter at Party Llama Games. They're a team based out of the UK that I've been working with. They're a great bunch of peeps, and the game is a fantasy game where you play as Pandora with your magical umbrella. You rip around this little world, complete side quests. It is in early access. We are working on things, and so things aren't going to be as beautiful as they can be, and we'll see how far it goes.
Very, very cool.
Alternatively, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Dean Steele, and that is as many handles as I can throw out.
If you are hanging out in the VG Embassy Discord and you see Ryan DS pop up, that is our pal right here, Ryan Steele, who's a very regular peep over at our VG Embassy Discord.
Giving my nonsense and gifs and comic wit.
You pretty much summed up the VG Embassy Discord right there. Wit and GIFs. Over and over and over again. And some VGM thrown in for once in a while in good measure. But we have a lot of fun there with a whole lot of our Patreon patrons. And that is not limited to, but also includes our tourist level Cameron Childs, aka Bruce Irons of the Mad Gear, Michael Bridgewater from the Forever Sound Version podcast, who just released a new episode and has a few more coming up, thank goodness, it's been a while, Donovan Orofino, and Chris Murray. Our VG emissaries Chris Myers, John Jekyll, aka Mixix Master, Ben the Dyad Dishman from the Dyad Presents, a VGM podcast, who also released a new show after a long hiatus, Chris Steenerson from the VG Jam podcast, Jordan Worma from the Table to Stage podcast, David Parrish, Bedroth from the Very Good Music podcast, Gannon11, aka Mike Stark from the Norwalk Gamer Symphony Orchestra, our audio attaché members Cameron Worma, Carlos from the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, and Dan Lawton from the Village Persons podcast. Our special agents, Volts Supreme from Volts Supreme's VGM Dream Stream Machine. I will get that right on the first try eventually. Muddle Madness, and I see. Ryan, the real deal, his gangsterness, Steele.
Who's that gentleman? He sounds like a real gangsta.
I have no idea. No idea who added that to our little document here. And of course, we have actually 2 VG ambassadors now. One, Alex, the Messenger from the Messenger Presents, a VGM Journey podcast, and Daryl Bowers, aka The Last Rican, who we will be seeing on a show very, very shortly.
Nice!
All right, once again, Ryan, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And we will definitely have to come up with a theme for another show in the near future.
All right. Sounds, as the French say, les tight.
Excellent noise. Like a tiger. So, we'll be back in another 2 weeks. Maybe with a solo show, maybe with a guest. I haven't decided yet, but we'll see what my week looks like. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.